We're on. So, just so everybody knows, we are recording the meeting. If you wish to make comments, please stand up and identify the street that you live on, and your name is preferable. We want to start with our honored guests, the police officers, Nick and Mike. Please come forward and tell us what we need to know about law enforcement.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
We're always good. It's always good to see you. And you know, we have our annual meeting May 12th, Thursday, May 12th, and it was really good last year when you were here for the sidewalk thing and people got a chance to talk with you. And if possible, I would like to encourage you to do that again.
I know, Mike and I talk. I know I cannot. I have a final for school that night. I think Mike
I will be in attendance.
Thank you.
I'll be there.
Good.
All right, so I guess I just want to kind of say hi to everybody, remind everybody that we're out here. I know there have been, I guess the biggest thing I want to stress, and I've talked to Beth about it, I've talked to Matt about it, is there'll always be like sporadic crime, crime opportunity happening. There's no real way to completely limit that from happening. The only kind of recurring crime trend that we have seen, and it's been about a year, almost 2 years, right? Almost 2 years, actually in July, since we've been here. The only kind of recurring crime trend we've seen is theft from autos, people making vehicle thefts, and on one hand, I'll say we're fairly lucky that it doesn't happen here as often as it happens other areas of Chevy Chase. I was just looking at the crime stats before I came up here. The most recent crime report came out yesterday for the previous 7 days, and this doesn't mean anything to you guys. The village, the beat that the village is in consists of the village plus probably 3 or 4 miles around it. The village had no theft from autos the last 7 days. There were a couple like up on the other side of East West Highway, but about a mile that way, they had 13 in that same week stretch, 12 of them in one night. All of which were unlocked vehicles, all of which were the same night, same people, same time of day, and it probably took 6 minutes for that whole thing to happen. So it's not like they happen over a long period of time where the police officers like to drive down the street and see 15 people going through cars. It could be one person going down a street, and we could be one block over and we'll never see it because it happens so quickly. So we're lucky in that it doesn't happen here as often as it happens other places. But it still happens too much because when we had 2 the previous week, I think 1 or 2 the previous week before that, all of which are from unlocked vehicles. So the one thing I think I've been stressing whenever I possibly can is be proactive and lock your doors. I think it's become so well known that this part of the county people for some reason just don't want to lock their car doors. It's become so well known that I don't think the police are going to have the ability to stop it from happening alone. It's not like it was even 3 or 4 years ago where you'd have a rash, you'd find a couple guys doing it, and then it would go away for a few months. It's now to the point where I know and Mike worked with these guys a lot more than I do, so he knows them a little better than I do, but the guys who are in plain clothes doing surveillance and making proactive arrests will make 1 or 2 arrests a week for people doing this, and it's still not changing the numbers of what's happening, which makes me believe that there's such a large number of people in, I hate to say it, but mostly in DC, who know that this is a target-rich environment. They're going to keep coming regardless until they stop having success here. I mean, they don't necessarily look at it as being the Village Martin's edition. Let's avoid that little curve. I mean, they're just going to walk down Bradley. They're going to walk down Thornapple. They're going to walk down streets that continue from Connecticut all the way, for a couple miles. So I can't stress enough that it's super important to lock your car doors. One of our good friends does a similar thing that we do in Chevy Chase View, right? Yeah. And they put out, every time the weather changes, every time there's a newsletter, every time they have an opportunity to tell the community, lock your cars, lock your cars, lock your cars, they do it to the point of exhaustion and where it's almost just drilling it into people's heads. I think last year they had 3 or 4 theft from autos in the whole town over that year stretch. So we're always out here, but like we've talked about before, we're here 7% of the week. So it's not going to happen by us doing anything to catch people doing it or deter it. It has to be people taking the practical step, locking their doors. And I think we put out a couple weeks ago in the newsletter a pretty lengthy thing about what you can do to keep your house safe. I think we're going to continue to put short little articles in the newsletter about practical things you can do for your own protection, for your own, not keeping your keys in your car for any of your cars, not even. Don't put the keys for another car in your car overnight, just things like that. But the biggest thing I can say, and we can't stress it enough, it's going to sound repetitive, but we're going to keep pressing it because we know that is the single biggest thing that people can do to protect their own homes. Because like I said, in the 2 years we've been here, that's the only repetitive thing. Like every so often, you'll hear about a burglary attempt, you'll hear about an accident somewhere. You'll hear about that sort of stuff happening. It's going to happen. That's just the nature of life. And the nature of our business. But the only recurring thing we see, and it frustrates us just because we know we've talked about it so many times, but lock your cars, be proactive, be a influence on those who live around you to say, look, I locked my cars tonight, make sure you do it. People make mistakes, they forget, I forget in my own house. Sometimes wife gives me a hard time about it whenever I do. But please, I can't stress enough, lock your cars, lock your cars, lock your cars. Mike?
Okay.
Good to see all of you. I know you've probably seen my fixed post down here in the white, unmarked in the late to early morning hours that I work. One of the things that helps us out as the police department and as your community officers here are when people are vigilant. Nick already stressed the locking the doors. Everybody here knows their community and knows who lives in it and who doesn't. Just sitting there enough, I get to know everybody and who's walking dogs and everything like that. So one of the things we see is that proactive communities are safe communities, even when a police presence isn't there, especially during the day. There are a lot of daytime burglars in and around Chevy Chase and Bethesda everywhere. And a lot of times there's no rhyme or reason to them. A lot of times it could be landscapers that are working next door. They could be maids. They could be anybody. But it's the entire know your neighborhood and who's here, especially for those stay-at-home parents, people who work evenings or whatever that are there during the day. We need to get the word out that it's okay to call our non-emergency number to ask for assistance for somebody that's not in the area. This entire, I don't want to feel like I'm this or that for calling in on that person. We have to do away with that stigma or whatever you want to call it, because that's how we solve these crimes and we get these people behind bars. So that's the big thing that's been working a lot around the county are these proactive calls where we can respond and catch people. I know we had the daytime burglary down here, or the attempted one, where they went through the porch or whatever that was, but right in broad daylight, right when everybody was probably out walking the dogs, and it's the people that you probably wouldn't assume, or the people that you would think, that person belongs there and stuff. So just get to know your community. If you see anything suspicious, please let us know. And obviously you know where we are and how to get in touch with us if you need anything, but that's it.
Good, thank you.
Any questions for us?
I just have a thank you, because you came for my elderly neighbor when she wasn't responding to calls and all, and you guys were there in maybe 35 seconds after I called, and it was really
Right down
great
the
because I was
street,
really
yeah.
scared. And it turned out she was fine, which is the best possible outcome, but it was really scary, and you guys came right away, and I thank you.
That's a nice story. Yeah.
Steve?
See us.
Back on the thefts from auto. Most people, when it happens, are chagrined, we left it open. Occasionally, though, we hear from people who are absolutely insistent that the car is locked and that the thieves have some device that they use which enables them to get into a locked car. Everything I've heard suggests that there is no such device.
I've heard that there is.
First of all, one of the questions is that correct? And if it is, I have a suggestion.
Well, I can say that I'm sure in some circles it exists. The people who are going car to car looking for your change don't have that. So people, I know people swear that I locked my car. I locked my car. I'm positive I locked my car. And they didn't. It's just, the time it takes, unless you leave something out in the car, like if you leave a laptop bag, you leave no one really carries GPS anymore, but if you leave the GPS on your window, Yeah, they may take time to break out a window because they know they're going to get a couple $100 item for their trouble. But no one's going to take the time to smash open a window, risk creating the noise, risk getting caught, just to go for the chance there may be 75 cents in change and like an easy pass in there. People always think, yeah, I locked my door. There's no way I forgot to do it. I can tell you they did. I mean, I can't tell you the last time I've responded. I don't work in patrol anymore, but I can't tell you the last time I went to a call for a vehicle break-in, and it was a vehicle break-in where they broke something to get it. And yeah, there may be something that exists like that Jason Bourne might have, but no one's going to be using it for the kind of thefts we're seeing. What they'll use it for would be something like, what you would see would be like a port kind of scheme where you're using some kind of master key to steal a brand new Mercedes that you're going to sell back to like Eastern Europe.
Right. Yeah.
Where you'll have an organized crime. You'll have, they'll take 20 or 30 cars, put them in a shipping container, send them back to another part of the world where they can sell them at a premium. That makes an investment like that worthwhile because it's going to cost money to do that. For some dudes walking up down the streets, it's not worthwhile.
Anyway, my suggestion related to that is, and I don't know whether the police department would do that, District 2 or elsewhere, if Martin's Edition could get some sort of a statement about that issue and then put that in the newsletter, saying that basically this is not the source of the problem. I think that would help residents who somehow are under the illusion that it really is.
It's like, no matter what you do, they're going to get in.
Right.
So
right.
it would break that illusion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And for somebody in Martin's Edition to say it, for one of the council to say it, I don't think it has the same impact.
Right.
Just something to
Good.
consider.
Interesting point. Good.
As long as you guys would be comfortable saying it, given that you also...
Yeah, of course, there would be the disclaimer that obviously we don't know 1,000%.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, that's
I think we're comfortable to say that in our experience, we've never seen anybody have this.
especially down here.
That would be perfect.
Right. Oh,
I think a lot of people, you have the new fobs, you lock your car door while you're in it or around it, and the door doesn't lock because the key's in it.
Right.
Or the fob is around it, and then you close the door thinking that it's locked.
Right.
Walk in, and you're like, I know I locked the door, which they did, but it didn't lock. So. But
good.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you for having us as always.
Thank you for your service.
You're welcome. Have a good night, Neil.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck
Thank
on
you
your
for
final.
coming.
Thank you, Neil, the help I can get.
Is that your protected Martin's Edition figure?
I have to go back up to hardcore Rockville.
Keith, can you give us the weather report, please?
Everybody's going to love the weather report.
4 months.
Not only is spring here now, and spring is sprung, but summer is knocking on the door. So look for a lot of 70s, 80s, even close to 90 coming up here in the next couple of weeks. But without the humidity.
Oh, good.
Oh, good job.
But at the same time, it looks like it's going to be kind of dry for a while. We're kind of going to be below normal.
Are we getting thunderstorms tonight and tomorrow?
Nothing tonight. Tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening, but most of that's just going to be run-of-the-mill showers.
Okay.
The weekend looks beautiful.
Good.
Great. Thank you.
Well done.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for yesterday.
Any other comments? Steve?
No, I definitely, is this the time for...
This is the time.
Yes, this is
I don't
it.
want to, if there's somebody else who came to...
No, we
Before Steve says, let me just make one last comment. This is not about the weather. It's about what the police were talking about. It's very simple. People shouldn't leave anything valuable in the car, period.
yes.
That ends it right there.
Okay, I state my name. Steve Schmall, Summit Avenue. 3 things. First of all, might as well start with nice stuff. I thought the celebration of the 100th anniversary of Martin's Edition was a wonderful event. And I want to thank the council and there are a lot of people who aren't here who were responsible for it. I thought it was really good.
I agree. I think that everybody did a great job.
And thanks for your help, too.
Yes.
Well, I did a little, but not much compared to a lot of other people. Having said that, now I get to the stuff that isn't so nice.
That isn't so good.
Well, two things, and I've communicated to the council on both of them. One of them maybe is more of a parochial concern of mine, and that is that I did not know, should have known, but was disappointed to hear that a decision had been made to restrict what's in the newsletter, in Martin's edition, to strictly village business. We had a fairly long history of allowing certain other things. I had a personal stake in many of them. I think that the policy runs counter to the notion of trying to involve the community. And I would respectfully ask that that be reconsidered, realizing that you will need to have guidelines, and that's not going to be an automatic thing. The only part of the guideline that I think is easy is if it's for profit, no. But where you go after that, and I think one of the things is you no longer have a space consideration in the same way you used to when it was all paper. That now it's mostly electronic, most people access is that way. There are some that have to be printed, but I don't know whether it's going to be a major cost to include any of that even in the paperwork.
But the decision was not made on the basis of cost.
No.
The decision was made on the basis of the village news getting lost in the many pages of adding the other not-for-profit stories.
Yeah.
And we felt that the village
Some of us
message,
felt.
some of us felt, that the village
Others did not so feel.
Right. The village, by limiting it, made the newsletter village business. And the listserv continues to serve as a vehicle for other agencies, nonprofits, in order to tell their story.
I completely understand both points.
Right.
I'm not totally sympathetic to either. One, in terms of things getting lost. If the nonprofits have whatever announcements about events at the end of the newsletter, I think that will greatly reduce that problem. And the other has to do with the unofficial listserv, which clearly is a vehicle, and I use it and I will continue to use it to publicize things. But it doesn't reach the same audience. It doesn't reach as large an audience. There are quite a few people in the community who do not participate in the listserv for whatever reason. On the other hand, constant comment, that's it? Contact. I can keep getting constant contact, at least in theory, reaches everybody and comes close. And that's why I would think it would help. But it is clearly the council's call, it's not mine. I'm simply respectfully requesting that you reconsider it, even if that ends up with a decision to go with the current policy.
Okay.
The second one I will be quite short, because Richard and I had a chat about it. At the July 2015 council meeting, I spoke about the need to move ahead on updating our street lighting. I wasn't probably the only one, but that meeting I might have been. I think I said that I would be greatly disappointed if action on this did not occur during the current fiscal year. I'm greatly disappointed because it's not going to happen. I have no easy solution to propose. However, I strongly recommend that the council end its connection with Scott Watson. He was most valuable in analyzing the village's current lighting situation and in outlining theoretical solutions. But he does not appear to have been responsive or helpful in moving the village toward a solution. I think the council either has enough information to proceed with an appropriate RFP or can get it more quickly without going through Scott. Thank you.
Thank you. It's on the lighting situation will be updated in tonight's meeting. I think it's in the manager's report.
I have a little update on it.
So, and did you have
I
comment?
just had a question about, do we know how-
Identification.
Oh, I'm
Can you-
sorry. I'm Celeste Biagini. I live on Taylor Street.
Okay.
I'm also a member of the Ethics Committee. I just have a question. Do we have any data on how many people are on the listserv
Yes.
versus not in?
We have data on how many people are on the village's constant contact. I get confused once this.
How many people are we potentially missing?
You would have to ask
information.
the manager of the listserv, Bill Lebovich, how many people are on the listserv.
On the unofficial one.
Right.
On the official one, it's almost 100% now, isn't it?
Right.
I guess I'm just saying I understand your concern, but can we size it? Can we scope it out to see if it really is an issue? Are we not reaching
Well, I can,
20, I mean, are we okay with not reaching 5%? Do we have any data?
Well, can you talk to Bill?
I can check the bill. I have
Okay.
not done so. The notion I have is it's roughly a third, or maybe even more, that are not on the unofficial list.
But we don't actually have the data
No, we do
to
not.
support that. Okay, I'm just asking.
I just
Right.
I know it's a larger number than those who do not get constant contact.
You can find out and tell Celeste.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I
Okay.
should.
15.
Oh, yeah.
We have 15 people in the village that we mail hard copies of the newsletter to, but those people are not necessarily without email. They have also asked, in addition to email, to receive a hard copy. Okay? But I think if Steve will follow up with Bill to find out how many people are on listserv. The problem is that, as we discovered fairly recently, that there appears to be a lot of people on listserv that are not Martin's Additions residents.
Yes, that's been clear by some of the comments.
Yeah, that there is a real problem. And so I don't know how people got on it, because it is supposed to be limited to residents of Martin's
Well, I know some
Additions.
people, when they move away, are still on the list.
Right.
There are a couple people I know of who have weighed in on issues, who state up front that they are no longer a resident.
Right.
So, I know that's a big job to purge the list all the time, but there should
Right.
be some process in place.
Right.
Can I clarify? There's also one additional thing that goes to trying to get the numbers to mean anything, and that is where I believe constant contact, there's one contact per household. That might not be true. Clearly, on the unofficial listserv, there can be two or perhaps even more email addresses for one household.
Right.
So if I were to learn, for instance, that there are 250 email addresses in the unofficial listserv, that doesn't mean that we've covered 250 homes.
Right. But constant contact also goes to more residents.
Oh, it does, okay.
And it doesn't go one per household. It goes to as many people as requested. Yep.
Okay.
Other comments? Questions? Okay, we're going to move on to the update from the Centennial Celebration Committee. I have to give that. So it was held on Sunday for a large crowd of residents and guests, and the committee wants to thank all of the many volunteers that assisted before and after. It wouldn't have worked. Delegate Al Carr, County Executive Leggett, attended and gave remarks, as did Karen McManus on behalf of Chris Van Hollen. So far, the cost estimate is around $16,500, including expenses related to the program itself, such as children's entertainment, videography, and VA equipment. The final bill for videography and drinks and AV has not been received. The committee will develop a video of the Centennial celebration to commemorate the event. Village residents displayed their artwork, publications, and other items, and the committee will dedicate the donated tree with a plaque to commemorate the Centennial. Any questions? Naomi, who is chair of the Centennial Committee, is in Amsterdam in a coffee shop.
Richard, is that tree the one down there? Yeah, because I water it every day.
Do you? Good for you, thank you.
I take a two.
Don't overwater it.
But I've been putting 2 buckets there every day since they planted it, since.
It's been so dry.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
It's a circle there next to my house.
The Election Committee, a request for amendment to the election proceedings.
I need to use the mic? Will it pick me up?
Yeah, I think it will from there.
Well, let me just start by saying I thought the Centennial celebration was just lovely.
Thank you.
And people had such a good time. Everything I've heard, I was there. I had a great time myself. So just commendations and a big thank you. It was very special, and it was really just right. Wasn't too long, wasn't too short. It was just right. So thank you. Very nice. On the Elections Committee, I want to thank the council for considering our request for an amendment. As the committee was putting together the elections packet to mail out to all the village households, which came in today's mail, little show and tell.
Yes, got it.
And I want to thank the staff for their help, Beth especially and Matt too, but Beth especially really helpful with just the logistics of putting the packet together. And I think it looks pretty classy, plus it's very informative. But anyway, with a thank you to the staff for that. As we were preparing this packet to get ready to mail, we realized that there was one line in the new election rules and procedures that the council passed on our recommendation in February. And it's the line about requiring the absentee ballot randomized control number to be shown on the outside envelope of the ballot. And we had intended as a committee to have that be like a voter privacy option. The way it ended up getting written and passed was that it was a requirement as opposed to an option. And so we were asking the
name of the person submitting the ballot was required, not the number.
Well, the way that the new procedures and rules got proposed, it said you had to put the number on the outside envelope, not your name.
Right.
And what we wanted was people to have the option. Their name, the number, nothing at all. We just wanted to make sure that if they wanted privacy, they had the number as an option. You could put number 103 instead of your name. But that's not what ended up getting passed in the rules, and there's many a slip between the cup and the lip. And as we were putting the packet together, we realized that it was probable, given human beings as we are, that a number of people would make mistakes. And because it was a new procedure and not something that people were familiar with, they would forget to put the number on the envelope. We want to be able to count the ballot anyway, and as I think you all know from the memo that you received from me and the committee, the legal standard here is that the election committee in any jurisdiction should count all ballots where we can reasonably determine the intent of the voter. We should not be rejecting legitimate ballots just because of an envelope glitch. So we're asking the council before this May 12th election to remove the line that says that the residents have to put the control number on the envelope. We want to leave it open, and simply deleting that one sentence solves the problem. So we're asking the council to delete the requirement for the ballot number to be shown on the outer envelope. We would like to be able to accept all valid ballots, and the number is unnecessary because the randomized system of giving randomized numbers to the absentee ballots is security. If the right number, if an assigned number is on the ballot itself, we don't need it on the envelope. And we certainly don't want to disenfranchise any of our voters. We'd like to count the votes. So, are there questions?
No, there are some questions beyond that. One of them is on the randomized numbers. That is there any possibility that people could get extra ballots and put randomized numbers on it that would thwart the system?
I don't really think it's possible, because what we have is a computer program set up by Steve Trowen, who I think highly of, one of my colleagues, that basically tracks for us. It's not public information, but tracks a randomized number. So you might get number 103 and you might get number 216. But we have the list of who that number was assigned to. Now, if somebody were to photocopy and just write 103 on a ballot, we would know that was not your ballot, because your ballot has the 103 in the official position as we put it. It would be very hard for someone to forge the ballot. We're doing the randomized numbers as an imprint, not as a printed number at the top. You can't duplicate it easily on a home computer, the way we're doing this.
And if you are you keeping both the number and the name of the person that it
Only
went
for the
to?
duration of the election, so that we can check, for example, that ballot 103 was given to Richard, the absentee ballot, and if, we get 2 ballot 103s that show up, right, we know which one's legitimate from the format that can't be duplicated, and if you show up at the polls to vote as Richard, which I assume you will, and we also already have a ballot from you on the 103 absentee ballot, which we assigned to you, we will have a conversation with you at the polling place so you can't vote twice.
So what about then, that really means that the vote is not anonymous.
It's anonymous except to the election committee. I mean, we're the only ones who would know.
Right.
And the plan is...
It's anonymous that you have the ballot, not how you voted.
Right.
Well, except that she has just said Richard got ballot 103, and
We have a
so...
two-step process. I see the concern.
Right.
We thought about this.
Okay.
Two-step process. First is to check the ballot coming in.
Right.
Right, that we set out absentee ballot number 103. Yes, that is an authorized ballot number that was assigned on the randomized list. Check it off, that ballot came in. Right? Then we open the envelope, and put the vote, and this is before the vote, we put the vote is happening afterwards, separately. What we're doing is checking the incoming absentee ballots for authenticity, authenticity. Are they in fact authentic ballots? We check them first for that. We don't look at the content. Then when it comes to voting time, we look at the actual ballot cast.
But what you're asking us to do is to eliminate having either our name or our random code on the outside envelope. And so the only way you can check it now is that you open the envelope and now you have the number and my name.
103, and we know who we assigned that to.
Yeah.
Now, what we would like people to do is have the complete option to put whatever they want on the outer envelope. We don't want to require them to put the control number on because we think they'll forget to do that, and we don't want to disqualify any voters. People should have the option of putting their name, their assigned randomized number, or nothing. We want to be able to count the ballot. If the ballot inside the envelope is valid, which we know from our control list and our randomized numbers, then we want to be able to count the vote.
No, I get all of that, but I'm having trouble.
I know, he said when you open it up, you look at the number, what else are you seeing on the ballot at that time?
Well, we would see the vote, but we're not counting that vote at that point. We're just simply putting that into absentee ballots.
Into the box.
Into the box. And then we verify that this is a legitimate ballot, and we put it in a box.
Yeah.
But can you verify that, can you just have a list of the random numbers and the names, once those have gone out, that the name, when I write for my absentee ballot, you are going to go down the voting list and you are going to check my name and say absentee ballot.
Right.
Okay, and then if you send that to me, and with number 103, and I'm not quite sure why you need my name and 103 connected.
Because you may show up at the poll and want to vote again.
Well, but my name's already been checked because I requested an absentee.
You requested it, but you haven't necessarily sent it in.
Well, but that goes back to if you request it, you
don't have to vote that way. You could decide not to.
But if they request it now and they don't cast it, aren't they allowed to vote on the day?
Yes, we just need to be able to check that we did not get your 103 ballot back when you show up at 5:15 at the polls.
Right.
I want you to be able to vote.
Right.
But if you've got all of your list of numbers, and that as you open the absentee ballots, or I come up with mine saying, like I didn't get my vote done, I'm giving it to you now, that when you go through the list, if you come up with two 103s, then obviously I voted twice.
Right.
And you don't need my name to determine that. I'm trying to there was a real concern at the last election about
people brought their absentee ballots to the election, and it was more than 20 ballots that were involved, and under the preceding rules, which were not well codified, not very clear, Those people were told that no, that the election committee then, last year, would not accept an absentee ballot at the polling place.
Right.
And we decided that that was really not good. We want to count all reasonable, authenticated ballots.
Right.
So one of the changes the council approved, which I'm very glad of, was that if somebody thinks they're going to be out of town, they ask for an absentee ballot, ends up they're here, they show up with the absentee ballot, we want to be able to accept it during the actual polling hours from 5 to 8 on May 12th. But to do that, we need to know that we haven't already gotten it. And for that, we have the master list. I do not think that the plan on the committee is for everybody to have that master list. There are only 5 of us. The plan is basically for Steve to have the master list, and we will resort to consulting that should the question come up on May 12th. We will cross-check. But the plan is not to disseminate the list of control numbers and names at all. I mean, right now, the committee arrangement is for Steve to have that and for us to check in with him if there's any question. But we do want to be able to accept your absentee ballot if you're in town on the 12th and bring it in person to the polls. We don't want to tell you no. Okay? And we have also made it easier for people to return absentee ballots in privacy by setting up the committee post office box as the site to mail to, instead of having it mailed to the village office. Because we don't want to have the staff involved in any question at all about how the absentee ballots are handled. So that's partly to protect that and partly because people do deserve privacy. And we've also extended the time that people can put an absentee ballot in person in the locked box, and we've changed the lock on the ballot box. So people can bring their ballots with or without an envelope if the locked box is sitting here and put it in up till 3 p.m. on election day.
Right.
Which is sort of the maximum time. That gives Steve time to cross-check absentee ballots and ballot numbers off the master control list before 5 o'clock we're at the polling table. So we need that 2-hour window to make sure that our voter rolls are up to date on who's already voted before the voting starts. So that was the maximum time we could give people to put the ballot in the box.
So, but you're saying exactly what I've been saying, I think, is that Steve's got a whole list of the control numbers.
Right.
So he's going through the ballots and checking off all of the control numbers of ballots that have already come in.
Right, the list sent and the list that's come in. As of 3 o'clock on election day, he will have the list that's come in, and that's when the box closes. And then at 5 o'clock, we're out front of the table, and we will accept absentee ballots from people who find that they are in.
How many
But he
digits?
can only do that if the numbers are on the envelope.
No,
He's looking at the ballot.
he's looking at it. We're going to have people put the ballots in the ballot box without an envelope. We want to be able to accept all valid ballots.
I actually have a question about the presentation of the ballot, the absentee ballot. There's a control number on it. Can Steve or whomever looks at it actually see how the resident voted?
Yes.
Yes, because the control number, it's one of these fancy computer programs where you kind of embed the number underneath the text of the ballot.
Is there a way that it could be folded or something
People
so that
are
it's...
welcome to fold it.
I mean, is that...
But we're going to have to look at the number to accept the ballot.
The issue?
The question is, all we need is the number on the ballot itself. We don't want necessarily want to disenfranchise somebody if they forget to put the number on the envelope. That's the issue for us here.
So, when the ballot is sent to me, then there's the outside envelope that has my name, and inside, is there a stamped envelope for me? No. I have to return it myself.
And we have 3 ways for you to return it. One is come put it in the box, which is locked with a new lock. One is to mail it to the secure
the post office box.
And the third way is if you find yourself here with the absentee ballot in hand during the election hours from 5 to 8.
Right.
You're welcome to come up to the table. We will cross-check Steve Master List, and hopefully we will accept your absentee ballot if you haven't already sent it in.
How many digits are in the control number?
I believe we're doing a 3-digit system.
3.
I will ask if you want more security, you could do 4. But
right.
Would you like that?
Or even 5.
Or 5. This
random.
raises the question of coming up with a 3-digit number. Coming up 5 digits makes it a lot more harder to get it. Right.
So let me see if I can parse out. I feel like there's 2 different things. There's ballot security and then there's ballot anonymity.
Yeah.
So ballot security could be increased increased by having more digits.
Yeah.
We could do 4 digits, I can ask for that.
You know, whatever the technology allows, I think is one thing.
Or 5.
But
Yeah, 5 would be better.
ballot anonymity is an issue. Anytime, if the number is going to be printed in any way on the ballot, they have to open that up in order to see it.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is that if you have the list of absentee ballot numbers that have been sent out, the random master list, and Steve opens the box at 3 o'clock, and you have, during the whole time period, have looked at the outside of the envelopes or even opened them and checked off the numbers, the numbers that have come in, I don't see why you need the name. Because if you...
Because the number might not be on all the envelopes.
Right, but also they have the voter list, and when they have requested, when I've requested, my name has already been checked off the voting list that I've gotten a ballot. So if I show up with my ballot 54321 and Steve is standing there and he says absentee ballot 5431 never came in, and so we can accept this ballot. That's all he needs. He doesn't need a name.
Right.
Correct.
That's what I'm trying to get to, is I'm not sure.
But no, here's the other...
That solves the problem day of, but it doesn't solve the problem if somebody
there's
has
another
to
problem. You send in the absentee ballot and then you show up here.
Well, but the tellers at the table will have the absentee
list.
ballot request list.
Yeah.
And if you're on there, you won't get
At the table, we're planning to just have the list, right, of
just the numbers.
I have a suggestion.
Steve will have a master file, confidential, that has a name attached to it.
If the council's concerned about anonymity, before any of these ballots are opened, the list that attaches names to numbers could be destroyed, so that no one would know who's voted, but you could maintain a list of numbers issued and not accept any ballots that are not one that's been officially listed or duplicated.
We have to sit down with the whole council, the election committee, to go over these things. These are procedural issues that take a lot of...
So what are you're suggesting is that, 3 o'clock, they come in, and the box is full, everything and at that point in time, separate the names from the ones that were sent, and then go through and open the ballots and say, yes, we got all of these numbers in.
Right, just have the numbers and check it off. All these came in, right.
At some point in time, there may or may not be other numbers that didn't come in, and they're going to have to reconnect those numbers to the names. Now, we won't know, because if they show up at the poll...
When they show up at the poll, why do they have
to take... If they show up at the poll, they can only vote by absentee ballot. They have to hand their absentee ballot.
Is that correct?
But we won't know.
No. If they show up at the polls, can't they just get a ballot?
Right.
Because if they are a person who has requested an absentee ballot, their name will appear on the request list, and they can't be allowed to vote at the table.
Well, this is
when you get their official absentee ballot.
No, but I think this is not something we should hash out today, because there are so many details and procedures. But it has to be set down with the committee to go through this.
Our committee is having a meeting Monday the 25th. You are cordially invited to come. We're right here at 7:30 on Monday the 25th. I want to assure you that, in fact, the reason we keep names attached at all to Steve's master list is simply so that if someone has returned their absentee ballot with no name on it, just the number, we need to know that, because if they show up at the polls to vote, we don't want them to vote twice. That's the only reason to keep a name. If Susie Smith shows up, but Steve has on the master list that Susie Street's, her ballot 2010 has come in, we need to know that, because we don't want 2 votes from Susie Smith, much as we do want to accept all legitimate votes. That's the only reason to keep the name. Not that someone shows up with an authorized absentee ballot, right, which we can just check against the number, but that somebody has already sent in an absentee ballot and then shows up in person. We need to know that that name is checked off on our voter roll. And that's why Steve needs to have a master list that connects the number to a name, so that before we sit down at the table at 5 minutes to 5 for the polling, that we have got our voter roll which Steve has taken from his master list confidential, and he has checked off the names of people who have already voted on our voting roll,
Who have requested absentee ballots.
for whom we have received absentee ballots. There's a difference between, 100 people might request it and 80 people might return it.
Right.
We got those 20 people who can still vote in person.
Right.
And what we need Steve to do, this is why we have the confidential
You have to
master
know
list,
who's who.
is to Steve will give us the voter roll at the table with people who actually voted checked off, so that I will know that you already voted, or I will know that you did not. Right? Even though you asked for an absentee ballot, it didn't come in. So what I have is not the absentee ballot numbers. What I have at the table as your clerk is the check off on the voting roll of who's already come in.
But it seems
Those
to me, Marty, that 20 people, that you can check, you're going to check off their name when they request an absentee ballot. Then you're getting them all back, and you know what random numbers you've assigned. So now you're going to go down and check through all the random numbers. So now Tiffany shows up, and you say, wait a minute, Tiffany, we've already checked your name off that you requested an absentee ballot.
And that we received it.
Yeah.
Well, no,
You don't need to
but I'm
receive it.
separating it because here are the control numbers, and her control number is 54321, and you say, we did not get your ballot, and unless you can show us control number 54321, before you mark it, then we cannot let you
Why,
vote.
why
No,
do
that's not correct.
well, yeah, why do you have to, if you receive an absentee ballot, why do you have to use that specific ballot to vote
You don't.
personally?
You don't.
You could just take one of the standard ballots and
Right.
rip up your old one.
But
and
they
throw it
have to
away.
prove that you haven't already voted.
Yes.
They already have that. They already know
We
that
have that
because
as
the
of
control
3 p.m.
numbers
on
have come
election
in.
day, because Steve has gone through
Right.
everything that's come into the box. Natalie and I have picked up everything that's come in the P.O. box. It's also a 3 p.m. election day deadline there. We have 2 hours, which I thought was pretty tight, but we could do it, to go through and check all the absentee ballots that have come in, period.
So here's my suggestion. I think it's self-security and anonymity. You have your 5 digits numbers. Steve has the who checked off an absentee ballot, who requested an absentee ballot. He, on the day of the election, separates the control numbers from the names and then gives the numbers to somebody else on the committee.
That's fine.
And he is not involved with checking to see which ballots came in. So if Steve's the only person with the names attached to the numbers when they go out, then when they come back in, the numbers are separated from the names, and a completely separate person on the committee does which of these numbers has voted.
We can do that. In fact, we talked about that in our committee.
Does that solve your concern, Richard?
I know, I'm
We've got to think this stuff
processing.
through. It is
The
really
anonymity.
difficult to operationalize this.
Yeah.
But the only question is, we wanted, if somebody got an absentee ballot and didn't send it in, we don't want to turn them away at the table if they show up from 5 to 8.
Right.
We want to be able to know that we did not take their return ballot, and so they could just do a regular ballot at the table.
Right.
And if somebody did get their absentee ballot back to us by 3 p.m., we will know that, because Steve, who has the master list confidential, will be checked off. The voter rolls that I'll be working with sitting out front, we'll just have, that so-and-so voted and so-and-so didn't. I won't have numbers at all. I will just have the voter roll.
Because you have to separate it earlier in the process. Does this solve your anonymity problem?
I'm not sure I'm not sure.
Yeah. The anonymity is there because you have the number on a
is
ballot,
there
then you
with-
have to look at the ballot.
With the way the person voted, the actual
Yeah.
ballot has the number.
But if you
And-
separate, if only one member, if you, Susan, have the names and the numbers, Richard got ballot 185, and then the ballot box comes in, and you take off the Richard, and you give me the
Strip
list
the
of
names and just look at the
strip
numbers.
names, and you give the
I think
list
that
to
would
me,
work.
hand it off to another member of the election committee, so it's even walled off. If you somehow remembered that Richard was 185,
Actually, what
I would, but-
I
Got
think
one
that's
other
gonna work.
problem, one other potential problem. So under our document retention schedule, ballots need to be retained for 6 months. I would probably apply that requirement
To the absentee.
to the control list as well. Someone who wants to challenge the election can look at these records, and someone will be able to determine who voted for whom by absentee ballot. by looking at that list unless it's destroyed.
Well, the control number is on computer, it's not actually hard copy. Does that still count as records?
It's a record.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the plan is basically that I, as one of the election vote counters, would never see the list. What I would see, the other 4 members of the committee would see, is the voter roll when I sit in that front, and then we go to count in the back room, whichever back room. I think we're using the artist studios. Beth was asking for permission for that. That all I'm seeing is ballots. And all the absentee ballots, probably all the ballots, I think, from what we're planning here, are going to have a number on them. And it could be 20815, or it could be 40321. But whatever it is, I'm not going to see anything.
Can you put a number on all of the ballots?
I believe the plan is to number all the ballots, but to have one sequence of random numbers that is absentee, so Teeth can track the absentees without going through all the ballots. But that's a technical thing. But the point is that, well, all I'm going to see is ballots. All I'm going to see is ballots. I will have no idea who cast any of those votes. And there is only one confidential master list, which I probably won't have seen. All I need to actually make the election work is the voter roll with Steve's checkoff on who's already sent in an absentee ballot that we received. Everybody else is legitimate to vote. And if somebody strolls up and says, I got sent an absentee ballot, but I'm glad I'm here, it's fun, I'm going to get my ice cream, then I basically go to Steve and say, Steve, is this a legitimate ballot? Is this one you sent out? Is this the person you sent it to?
You don't want to turn people away in case they've lost their
Or they lost it, or
ballot.
If they lost their absentee ballot, if we didn't get it in by 3 p.m., they can vote out front at the table.
Yeah.
We want to accept the votes.
Right.
We want
Can
to
you
make
what about double enveloping them? When
People
they're
are
mailed out,
welcome.
put the control number on
On
the
the outside
envelope, not the outside envelope, but the second one. So that when it comes
outside the
back, the
ballot,
control number's on the envelope.
We just need it on the ballot. That's all we need. We don't want to make this hard for people.
Well, this is the question about anonymity.
Yeah.
Right.
This is, what she's saying is, not only will the control number be on the ballot, but it'll also be outside on the envelope that the person mails back.
That would be nice. That's the
Well,
instructions.
But I'm saying-
Well,
No,
let me tell you
pre-printed.
how the town of Chevy Chase does it, for
Okay.
example, and maybe there's
Yeah.
a possible solution here. They put the control number only on the ballot envelope.
On the envelope.
So the ballot itself gains anonymity as soon as it's taken out of the envelope.
Okay.
And you have the,
Oh, that's an
you
interesting.
can only
that
vote
was-
by absentee ballot if you have the official envelope.
And that solves all of our problems.
So you're saying that you have to send back the envelope
You got.
that you got
You
with
can
the
use any
ballot in
ballot
it.
you want. You can get it off the internet, but you have to use the official envelope. And once the ballot's removed from the envelope, you can't tie the vote
And
to
you
a
can
person.
use the envelope then to check off the numbers, and
Yes.
basically whether it's tied to a name or not doesn't matter.
Right,
Because
Steve
you
could
don't
still
know.
have his
His
control
master
list.
list.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that somebody then later who was challenging it still could not put the control
A
list
name.
against the name.
Right.
Right.
But this requires putting an envelope and ballot.
Well, have any absentee ballots been requested yet?
One.
Okay.
Well, but the process hasn't started. You haven't distributed any yet.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
so
you could. But the problem is, let me raise another issue. One of the improvements that we in the council wanted to make was to enable people to request absentee ballots by email and us to send them an absentee ballot by email in response. So they could just print it out. We wanted to make this as easy as possible for people to vote. This was one of the things that we did discuss at length. And that's where the envelope, the outer envelope kind of fell out.
Right.
Because when you're not emailing an envelope, I mean, you're
Right.
emailing an absentee ballot to this person, and then they can print it out. It's valid, whatever, and they print that out and they send it back to us. Now, people understand they have to send it back in hard copy. We're not authorized to accept email return ballots because the talk about quality and security controls on that are way beyond our village ability. But we do want to be able to make it possible for people to ask for it and for us to send it out. It's very easy.
So
So
if they
if,
ask for it, they send it out, they should still, then they're gonna have to write
Right.
the control number on that outside
Right,
envelope.
right, right.
So if we keep it as a requirement that they have to write the control number on the envelope, we will disenfranchise.
No, this is for a would be for a very small number of
We have
people.
more than 125 absentee ballot
I know, but who are requesting it by email?
We don't know.
Right.
This is the first time for that. We don't know.
Right.
If people request it by email,
Yeah.
most people do that because it's so much easier.
Well, how many out of the 125 emails were not counted? Do you remember, Ted? Was it like, there were like 10?
4 or 5.
All right, so
No, it was more than 20. More than
We couldn't
20.
verify that they were legitimate.
Yeah.
Right.
If they broke the rules, we had to discard them.
And that amounted out of the 300 plus ballots?
Yes, out of the whole thing.
It was 4 or 5?
Very small.
But we had more
Email
than
them
25
an
ballots that we could not accept
number
at the polling place because people
that
showed up
they-
with an
that
absentee
they would
ballot form.
attach to.
And last year they were not, the committee was, last year was
One
not
guy
that
showed up.
successful.
saying have them write it on.
We want to be able to
But
accept
she's saying
absentee
people
ballots
are
at the
gonna
table.
forget to do
Well, I
that.
had to deny him.
Just a minute,
That
Ted
caused a lot of
speaking.
dissension last year.
I'm sorry, Ted.
There was one person who showed up with an absentee ballot and wanted to vote, and I said, by the rules, at that time, you're out of it.
But you're saying only one person.
Only one person showed up.
And Steve said it was more than 20. So I don't know what to make of that discrepancy. I'm
Okay.
going by what the committee told me.
It will be an increased cost to the village, but it may solve the problem if we supply the return envelope with the embedded number printed on that versus the ballot.
But
The
the committee
email
wants to
request.
honor email requests, so you've got to
So we
either
can-
have people write their number
Write their
on the
own number
envelope,
on it. That-
or
yeah, this
you got to
is-
mail them an official
So
envelope
it's an
quickly.
option. They choose the option. Can they write their number on the envelope, or can
They
they?
can write the number on the envelope. We want to be able to accept any
Right,
valid
right. But
ballot
now
regardless of
now
what's
we're
in the envelope.
suggesting a change in procedures.
Right,
So
which
that every envelope, every ballot, every absentee ballot will come back in a pre-printed envelope with a number, unless you want to do it by email, and then it's your responsibility. They have to follow the rules. So for the 3 people who do that, they're going to have to write the
We'll
number.
find out. It'll be interesting
Yeah.
to see how many people
Well, I mean,
request by email.
even if they send them out, so Steve, whoever sends out the ballot says, Richard, your number 185. You can either ask for the village to send you a pre-printed envelope with 185 on it, or you can take your own envelope, stick your ballot in it, and write 185. You must write
Right,
185
right.
if you want this to be counted.
That's actually what the instructions that we sent out say.
Right.
Because we very carefully followed the current rule, which requires the number on the outer envelope. And then as we were putting the package together, we realized, what do we do if people forget to put it on?
So if we supply the envelope to them, and they send it back in that envelope, that precludes that problem.
That precludes the problem.
Yeah, except for the possibility of the email.
Well, in the email requests, it does seem to me it's very simple to say.
It's incumbent then on the
Unless
person.
this number appears on the outer envelope, this ballot will be discarded.
That puts us in, I think, legal difficulty. I'm not an attorney, but I have looked at the election legislation, because the legal standard really is pretty solid, that if the electoral vote counting body, which is the election committee here in VMA, has any reasonable way to determine the intent of the voter, we are expected to count the ballot. We are not really, I can't find examples of people rejecting absentee ballots or rejecting a valid ballot that had like a security number on it simply because of an envelope glitch. I mean, I just don't see.
So Marty, and I'm just security-wise, we're emailing out ballots. Someone can forward
Sure.
a ballot, and 15 people can vote, send it to the P.O. box that have publicized, and unless there's an identifier on the outside of that, we're not going to know whether or not that was authorized by the election committee mailed out.
But they can send us 15 envelopes with number 1523 on it, all right? In
Well,
which
then that means that vote can't
Yeah,
be counted.
right.
How do
vote
we-
can't be counted, and that's where we need Steve's master list of who got ballot 1523.
Right, yeah.
Ted, did you ever have that problem in the past where the ballots weren't signed or whatever on the outside of them? I know Richard asked you that, but like,
You mean on the absentee
I mean,
ballot?
people generally remembered to do that.
Absentee ballots, no, there was no, they always were signed. Yeah.
I mean, the instructions were very clear about that. because this then goes into this next level of if I send in, write to you and say, I want a ballot for me, for my wife, and we have 2 kids at college, and so I want absentee ballots for the 4 of us.
That's what our procedures provide for.
Okay, so then you're going to send them 4 different control numbers.
4 different control numbers on the ballots, 4 different ballots for each. And we need a separate email address for each person, right? So it can't be that I would send 4 ballots to Richard. It would be I would send an email ballot with a control number on Steve's master list to each of the 4 people in the household.
So you won't send them just to my email address. You want my wife's email address. You want my kid's email address.
This is required, that if you want us to email you a ballot, you have to give us the full name of the person and their individual email so that we can tag on Steve's master list that was ballot 403.
I just want to say quickly, Marty, that we are so appreciative of what the election committee has done, so don't misconstrue
Not at all. We have
questions.
hashed through this stuff until our heads were spinning.
I have a question. Ron.
Ted had raised his hand before.
I'm just going to say that you have a master list, the voter poll, and you've marked it up with everything that you've done. When the election is going on, you can check off people or not check them off. And that becomes the controlling thing. You don't have to worry about all this other stuff. We've already taken care of it previously.
That's our plan, Ted. That's our plan.
But we're going to say Ron.
What was it?
One other possible suggestion. When I first read this, what I was envisioning in my head was these randomized control numbers were going to be so hard to forge.
That is the plan.
That you don't need a name attached to them.
Right.
I'm giving out this number that no one else can forge. We've got a list of all the numbers we gave out. The ballots come in with the numbers on them. We can check, is that one of the random numbers we issued?
That's an idea.
And you don't need a name attached to it.
Right. But this means like
requests an absentee ballot and shows up on election
Unless, and this is how I thought it was going to work as well, you have a list. These 80 people requested an absentee ballot. That's the only way they're allowed to vote. If they show up at the table, you say you can still vote today, but you got to vote with your absentee ballot. I lost it. I'm sorry. We can't let you vote.
We don't want to be turning people away from the polls.
See, that's where you have to attach it to a name.
That's a problem. That's a problem then, Marty, of where you potentially have people who have submitted an absentee ballot, although it seems to me you will have crossed them off their random number off the list.
Yes.
And you've also have checked their name that they requested an absentee ballot. And while we're back to if you request it and cannot bring the ballot with your number, you can't vote. And I realize you are trying to enfranchise everybody, but there has to be protection for those of us who follow the rules.
Well, and if they got it by email and they show up on election day and say, I lost my ballot, can't they just pull up their email and print it out
One
again?
would think, but again,
you can't, not necessarily.
where are they going to print it? I mean, we could send them home and say, go print it off your email and bring us the absentee ballot, but that's not the procedures the way they are.
Ron, I have another question for you.
Yeah.
If we leave this open, you had an interpretation that if these, I think if this is a regulation, it has to be passed by ordinance. But what if, or a procedure, what are the possible ways of interpreting these procedures or regulations?
Right, so our charter says any regulation or ordinance has to be introduced at one meeting.
Right.
Passed at a meeting subsequent after at least 30 days, unless it's deemed an emergency. And you can approve it by emergency with 4 affirmative votes.
Okay, now...
But an emergency measure expires in 60 days, so you'd have to approve the procedures again.
And what if it's not a regulation? Suppose it's a procedure or something
Then that rule doesn't apply.
So there is a question as to whether this is a regulation or a procedure.
And on the safe side, I say we treat
You're on
it
the safe side.
because...
But suppose we were on the unsafe side.
If we call it just a procedure, it's called Election Rules and Procedures. That's the title of the policy.
But it regulates how people can vote.
Yeah. But, yeah, so what, is there clarity here about what is a procedure and what is not a procedure?
I think the rule of thumb is if it's something that regulates conduct, it's a regulation, and this would regulate how people can vote by absentee ballot.
I'm trying to make this easy.
I know, I'm sorry.
I appreciate that.
Your attorney's telling you. That's well.
Okay.
But Arthur, that
Yeah.
that doesn't mean
Yeah.
you can't adopt an emergency measure next week.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to do it
I was
tonight.
thinking the clock is ticking here.
Well, it is ticking, but you don't have to do anything tonight.
So
Oh,
how
okay.
You need more
this?
It'll
time.
be an ultra emergency
We
next week.
Yeah.
the recording will be up on the website, hopefully tomorrow-ish. Beth, is that logistically possible?
No,
Get-
it takes like a day to download,
All right.
transfer it to a different format, and then
Okay.
post.
Going to be up by Monday, close of business?
Wait a minute, so when's your next meeting?
Our next meeting is Monday evening, 7:30, and I would like to invite you all to come
Yeah.
and talk to Steve about how the randomized numbers work.
I don't think the randomized numbers are the problem. It's the problem if you are tying the numbers to a ballot handed to Tiffany Cisna. And then at some point in time, since our records retention policy says we're keeping this, someone will be able to connect 185 was on my ballot,
Right.
and there's ballot with 185 on it, and she voted for herself. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's the anonymity issue.
Right,
Security's not the problem. It's the
right, yeah, okay. I understand the question.
Okay.
And let me ask you to come to our meeting on Monday at 7:30 here, and let's see what we can work out. And I do think that this election, our goal here again is to be as open
Right,
as
right.
possible.
Yeah, you have all these possibly conflicting goals
Requirements,
of
yeah.
openness and
We-
security and anonymity.
So Ron, we're not making a change tonight.
Nope.
If they come up
Yeah.
with a gangbuster airtight solution on Monday night, and if there are three of us who can attend,
That needs to be
it
4.
needs to be four who can attend that meeting,
Right.
then we could go forward with an emergency change.
Or we could
You have
do
to give
it.
notice that you'll be meeting as well on Monday.
Yeah,
So we'll have to find out whether
If we
we've
can all
got
make
4
it.
of us
right.
that
Or-
will be
Do that.
here.
Or I'm leaving town Tuesday. So,
We have to meet Monday, or how long are you gone?
about 2
No,
weeks.
Monday.
Or we have to find Katya. Is she gone?
No,
Just
no,
temporarily?
she's here.
She's here, okay.
I want to thank the council for your help with adopting these new procedures. There are a lot of big improvements that we made.
Yeah.
Yes, agreed.
And this is something I think that's really going to help people feel that their votes count and that we are doing the security and privacy issues that we are trying to do. But it is complicated, and we have thrashed it out to our best of our ability. We welcome your
The
input.
first time through is
First time
is a
through.
challenge.
And we don't want to reject people just because
Right.
an envelope glitch.
Right.
That's our bottom line. We would like to count all valid ballots where the ballot itself has the authorized security number. And again, I want to commend the staff because I think the packet looks really good.
Good.
Thank you for your help. We will see you all at our meeting Monday. And
Thank you, Marty, and
Good,
thank
thanks.
the committee. I mean, it's a lot of work, we know that, and it shows,
It is.
it
has been,
shows,
it is.
yeah.
But it has been great fun working
Okay.
together with the committee and with the council.
Okay.
Thank
We'll see you Monday. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
The thing that's not on the list right at this moment, but that I would like, because I think the building administrator's report is at the bottom.
You want to let them go now?
Yeah, I wanted to see if we could move that up.
Yes, I agree.
Do you mind?
No, it's fine.
You all have it in your packet, I guess.
What number is that?
9.
Okay.
We've had 2 houses recently that have had water house connection problems, 3517 and 3519 Bradley Lane. And both of them,
Their piece of it or our piece of it?
What do you mean
Or
there?
WCC's piece of it? The
the
water
water
line?
house connection, which runs from the main to the house.
Oh.
Not in the street, I'm sorry. Both of them, one of them apparently was a leak when WCC did the work. The other one was leaking prior, but it was worsened by the WCC. Both of them had contractors come out, repair the water main, but both of them had work taking place in the village right-of-way. Sidewalk, sod was disturbed, no curb and gutter was disturbed. And on the first one, we required a bond to make sure that the right-of-way was put back. We had a little problem with it, but I think it's all right now. The second one, the work was done and completed before we ever got the bond. So they put the sod back. It needs to be watering. Hopefully we'll get rain tomorrow and the sod will live. But it might be an ongoing thing now that WCC is working. We might have more water main problems popping up. I talked to Dwayne, the WCC construction manager, and he said if it's a result of work that WCC has done, their contractor will make the repair at their cost. But on 3519, the homeowner acknowledged that he was having leaks before, so it was his responsibility. So we're working through that. The Cummings Lane, garage, and pool and deck is still going on. No changes to that.
Is there active construction?
Yes, they were out there earlier in the week.
Okay.
On 3505 Raymond, we had a stop work order. It was released after they came in with the reapproved plans from the county and an updated county building permit. So the stop work order was released on April 8th. But we also at the time required that they move the temporary toilet that was supposed to be stuck up against the house. It's now up in the right-of-way next to the boat. And they also had 3 piles of debris in the front yard and a black trash bag that was there. We asked them to get rid of that in the stop work order memo. They moved the trash bag with the birds that were eating the trash, but the toilet and the debris has still been there. Yesterday, Matt sent the homeowner a email with a warning saying if it's not removed by 5 o'clock tomorrow, another stop work order will be issued.
And have you gotten a response?
Okay. I've talked to him twice and told him, I asked him last Thursday, I asked him to move everything, move the toilet back where it's supposed to be, clean up the debris so it would be nice for the weekend for the neighbors.
Right.
And it hadn't been moved since. So he's not responding to Matt and me. He might respond to this additional warning of a stop work order. We'll see.
We're hoping.
Yeah, it's probably, in order to move the toilet, you probably got to have some kind of piece of equipment or backhoe to come in and move it. So that, but he's had a week. The debris just means putting the stuff on a dump truck and moving it. So that's still going on. 3525 Raymond, they're making interior improvements, and then they have a dumpster. On 3506 Turner, doing one of our daily ride-throughs of the community, Wayne noticed that they had built a landscape retaining wall in front of the property. It was in the right-of-way. We finally tracked down the current homeowner who just purchased the property recently, and he might be flipping it because the sale sign's still out front. But today, Ron issued, sent to, I guess, Matt, a right-of-way license agreement that the homeowner has to sign, notarize, and then Richard will have to sign it, and then Ron will record it in the land records, which states that if for some reason Pepco or the village has to work in that right-of-way, that wall can come down and the plantings come down, and it's their responsibility to replace them, not the village's. That just gives you all control.
Right.
And we've had that several times before in other places. 3507 Turner Lane, that's the Wally piece, that's still construction's going on, and I talked to her yesterday. By the way, while I was talking to her, she brought up again the issue of property lines. And if you're looking at her property, she had her property surveyed recently. The property line is about 2 feet staggered from where her fence line is. So her neighbor's fence is on her property and her fence is on the neighbor's property on the side. And
so the fence on the left, as an example, is on the neighbor's fence on the left is on her property, and her property on the right, the neighbor on the right has the other fence.
Yeah, if this is her property, it's like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that comes to the issue we talked about, I guess, on
Surveying.
Sunday, when one of your residents has a 1907 survey he's going to provide that we can look at to see if that clarifies things.
Right.
I doubt if it will.
Yeah.
Did she have a boundary survey done?
She did.
Is she willing to give us the information from the boundary survey?
We have it over there in the phone.
And if we put it into the GIS survey that we have, would that help us to calculate down the line of that street the rest of the boundary points?
We'd have to give it to AMT, the company that did the survey, then they can do it. It would be easier if, when I pull out the survey tomorrow, I'll see who did the survey and ask them how they did it and what they use as control.
Okay.
Because they might have used
Either way, if
CPJ
we-
control.
Either way, if we have a boundary survey, just say from each street, we could probably figure out the rest of the house.
What's, you said CPJ, what is that?
Back in, I think, the 90s, the village hired Charles Johnson Associates, CPJ,
Oh, yeah,
to do
okay,
a survey.
right.
And they set monuments at each end of each block.
Yeah.
And from what I've told, Cass Engineering and Potomac Surveys use those monuments to do their survey.
Okay.
But that's where we're having conflicts because I'm not sure what AMT used either.
Okay.
So we've got right now 3 to 4 different surveyors using something.
Right. And I talked to when they were doing that, and they said everything was off. All the controls, everything. And nothing was consistent with anything at the time.
Right. And we're finding that on most of the lots.
Okay.
Is that the good news?
No, I didn't say anything.
The thing is, you don't know where you live. You may be living on your neighbor.
On the intersection of Quincy and Oxford, there is when you're making a turn going east on Quincy and you turn right to go south on Oxford, a lot of the large trucks are rolling over the curb and damaging the curb. And we met out the other day, Richard and Matt and Joe Cuccio and I, and there's several solutions. One is putting no parking signs on the north side so that trucks have a bigger way to swing around.
That would eliminate 2 current parking spaces.
Both in front of one house.
Right.
That has a driveway.
May I speak?
He does have a driveway.
Not yet.
They have a driveway with 2 cars. The other would be placing ballards on the fillet, and hopefully the trucks don't come by and knock them off, which would be an expense to the village, and if they knock them off, another expense. But the third option would be it's Montgomery County, I found out since the last meeting, owns and maintains all the storm drain in the village. And we're looking to see if Montgomery County can change that inlet or replace it with a smaller inlet so that we can make a larger fillet there. I've called the maintenance people in Montgomery County 4 times, including once this morning, and haven't gotten a phone call back. So I'm still waiting to hear back.
And if we could get them to agree to that, what it would do would be to move that corner back further, so there'd be more room for the trucks to make the turn.
Yes. But right now the inlet's 20 feet long. If they can reduce it to maybe 15 feet or just reconfigure the northern end of it, then we can make a flatter curb radius.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 Oh, you don't let me speak?
I am.
Thank you. I rushed here and I didn't have it. I wanted to hear the report on the water improvements, but I'm so glad to have heard you speak. But I made some preparations today, which I don't have with me. And I've been asking for the removal of the stones, which is, of course, what is prompting these investigations. So today, I took a hose. I put one end of it at the juncture of the street curb with where the storm drain is. And then running along the edge of the stone that's closest to Oxford Street, across the walkway, and over to the stone that's over by Quincy Street, and then brought it up to a split in the curbing, one of the joints. That line with the hose flushed up against the base of the rocks that are there represents the line of the truck tires that have pushed the rocks back.
I could put the hose back. I took it away, but I'd be happy to put it back if somebody'd be willing to come and take a look. The first I heard about your investigation is that nothing could be done because the storm drain is there. I don't see where this new curb with a new alignment could not be done and have absolutely no effect on the storm drain, because the street curb butts up to the storm drain concrete. They're two separate, construction activities in a sense. They're not joined at the hip. There's just a seam there. And by realigning the curb, according to the hose that I ran and took pictures of that I don't have with me, but I would happy to share with you, it's possible that could be done, and we have an ideal time coming up for doing that when the water work is done and the street work is going to be repaved. So I would appreciate if that could be kept in consideration. I would be happy to email the photos that I took today to anyone who would be giving them a serious look and consideration.
Matt?
Like a quick question. I mean, just to understand the geometry there. You're saying that you could shave off that corner.
Yes.
And there would still be an entrance to the storm drain, just move back a foot or two.
The storm drain would not be affected at all.
Okay. Because I may have done the same thing. I walked over there too and saw that you could shave off a considerable part of that turn without touching the storm drain.
I mean, it's so obvious if you're there standing in it.
Yeah.
You can see where the stones have been moved to.
Yeah.
And if you just follow that line of the edge of the stone that's closer to the street on either Oxford or Quincy,
yeah.
And that's what I did, running this hose. That's basically the line of the tires cutting the corner short.
Right.
Okay, and if you were to do that, conceivably it could be even moved back a little bit further.
Right.
But at least the stones are a reference to the space that the trucks need.
Okay.
The idea of taking parking places away from 155 Quincy Street, which is the north side of the street.
Right.
I don't see, you can put the restrictions on, they're not going to be observed. Because that's a very active family. There's 3 or 4 drivers in that family, and there's 3 to 4 cars around that all the time.
Okay, why don't you send the pictures in and we'll take a look at them.
Thank you very much
Thank
for letting
you.
me speak. I appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome. Do you, well, without going back to look at it, I just need to know whether or not, you can go back, we'll get the pictures and we'll go from there. Okay.
I'd be happy to meet with you if you'd be willing to come.
Okay, but okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
okay.
One issue though, just to clarify. Joe Kutro was at the meeting and he worked for the city of Rockville in the Public Works Department for years, and I've known Joe for years, but one issue we have is that's an old brick inlet, and
Yes.
part of that curb that's there is protecting the inlet. If you take that curb away and a truck comes around and hits that corner of the inlet, it's an old brick inlet, the inlet will collapse.
I'm not talking about taking the curb away. I'm talking about taking the curb away that exists and then putting in a new curb and gutter. And obviously the curbing that's there is stronger than anything new that'll ever be put in, because they just don't seem to, to have the strength in new construction these days. But if a demand was made for the highest quality, the highest strength, new curbing and gutter, then conceivably we would have a strength and durability situation as has been existing for these many, many years. And you would again have the curb and gutter there to support it. Just, it would be approaching, it'll still come away, the way it is now, straight away on the line, and then start to curve sooner.
Yeah, right.
And-
I think that's what my solution was. But send us your picture. We'll take a
Right,
look.
I think that we
Yeah.
need to look
Yeah,
at it
I think
with regard
we can't
to
speculate
that.
more on the
Right, where it's going to go.
imaginary geometry in our heads.
There's, I don't know.
And that whatever is done has to accommodate emergency vehicles.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah,
That's, okay.
Okay.
So can we move on?
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
The storm drain inlet up here, just north of Shepherd, the pavement collapsed and there was a big hole there. I contacted the State Highway Administration. They came out and put the temporary plate down. They called me yesterday and said they were coming out either tomorrow or Monday, depending on the weather tomorrow, to rebuild the inside of the inlet and to replace that pavement. So the plate should be gone hopefully by the end of Monday. He couldn't give me an exact date because it's all depending on how much rain we get tonight and tomorrow. So, but that should be fixed next week. WSC is still working on the south end. They were on Melville today replacing Waterhouse connections. They are hoping to wrap everything up soon, and we're still trying to get copies of the plans that were done in the north section a couple years ago from WSC. They're supposed to have them in their archives, and Dwayne, the WSC manager, is looking for them, trying to get them for us, so that when we update our GIS, we have that information.
Right, that's where Pepco was 5 years ago.
That's my report.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
What about the GIS contract? And we were gonna look-
Which is that?
Oh, I was asking him if were you planning on bringing that up?
We did.
Oh,
While you were out
Oh,
cooling off.
okay.
I've looked at it, I haven't got any information yet.
Okay.
I'm still trying to track down what we sent to them. The original contract was from 2000, for the new GIS system. I'm looking into what our contract says with Amort Thomas, what services we get. They had sent us a proposal to provide information that we really need, but it's $3,700, and I'm not sure it's worth it for that. But we want to find out. We need to update the system first before we do anything else. And are we doing an update, or are they going to have to charge us for an update? So I haven't gotten that information yet, but I'll have it soon.
Okay, any more questions? If no one objects, I would then go to 7, to the ordinance, to amend Chapter 7 of the code and adding counsel for the Ethics Committee reference in the code.
And other edits.
And other edits.
right.
Okay. One of them has to do with the established building line and bringing our code into compliance with the changes that have been made by Montgomery County. Is that correct?
That's my recommendation, yes.
Which is essentially, if I understand this right, that the established building line applies only to new construction.
Correct.
Okay. Right.
At the county right now.
And what happens with ours not being, with the way our established building line is right now, what happens?
If you have, first of all, you have to take the lot line and you go 300 feet in each direction, and you take those current setbacks, which you take off the GIS system, and then we average what those setbacks are, and that is the new established building line. If you have, say, 4 lots on each side of that property, if 2 of them have recently been rebuilt and have larger setbacks, then the established building line goes from the minimum of 25 feet, could be as high as 32, 34, 35 feet, which means a house that's sitting with a 25-foot setback from an old built back in the 1930s, if they want to add a front porch onto their front yard, they are forbidden to do it by the code because they're already non-conforming. And
they're non-conforming because these new houses were built further back, which moved the established, so they were conforming before the old houses, theoretically, were taken down.
That was the problem we had with Mrs. Metwally. They wanted to build a 36-inch porch, and they asked for a variance because by the current EBL law, they weren't allowed to build anything.
Right. And we've got another case now on the property on Raymond of where he wants to put a porch on, but because of new house constructions which have moved the established building line back, he can't do that.
Correct. Yeah, makes sense.
And the downside of doing this is, of changing this code to eliminate new properties? Is that what it?
It eliminates existing properties from the EBL setback. The existing properties would be based on the 25-foot setback, minimum.
What's EBL?
Established building line. And yeah, I would love to explain it to you, but I haven't a clue.
But there was one, I mean, the current code calls for doing an average of 300 feet in each direction. That's like 10 properties.
Correct.
With their typical 60 foot.
But only if they're on the same block. You don't cross.
Only if on the same block.
And the same side of the street.
Right. And now, clarify again, but there has to be at least 2 to establish an average.
Counties, there has to be 2.
There has to be at least 2.
Right.
But we don't have that issue because we don't have a lot of empty lots. Okay. Yeah, can we go the ethics committee? I had one question on the ethics change.
Okay.
It says that the ethics committee can go consult with the village council as to whether they should use village council in an issue or hire their own council. Now, here is the thing that, it's not an inconsistency, but it raises an issue. They will recommend a council that is to be approved by the village. They can approve their own lawyer, let's just say lawyer, that the council could then approve. If this were Venezuela or Brazil, I could see a problem. If the council itself was under investigation, they could simply say, no, we refuse to appoint this new lawyer.
Correct.
Okay, so I am correct in my interpretation.
Yes, you are.
And if this were Venezuela, I would have concerns. I don't see a way out of it. Unless they just have authority to hire their own.
2 ways out of it.
Yeah.
One would be to give the Ethics Commission a budget and allow them to pick their own and spend their own money, but that raises a lot of administrative issues and budgeting issues.
Yeah.
The other way to do it was how I originally drafted it, and was to allow the village attorney to choose the special counsel. If it's not a perfect situation either.
Right, because the village attorney could be involved
too.
and
Mike Zielinski argued that the village attorney isn't authorized to necessarily spend funds.
Right.
So the council has to say.
Has to do it.
Yes.
I don't see a way out of it.
So there is
this was
no perfect solution, but this was based on one of the recommendations from the Ethics Commission and the Ethics Committees.
Right. Okay. I don't see it. I mean, I could see a potential if we had an absolutely corrupt council, but not foreseeing such an event.
Right. Hopefully.
And again, this version is the one that, this was included in the last round of code amendments. It was not adopted due to the concern raised at the time by Mike Zielinski.
Right.
Ethics Committee went back, reviewed it, concurred with the need for them to be able to access counsel, or the potential need for them to be able to access counsel, and the way that it is drafted right now addresses their desire to be able to access counsel, Mike's concern about the village council authorizing that access to it.
Good.
Celeste is here representing the...
Well, I really can't speak to this.
It was
discussed.
Do you have any comments you'd like to make on behalf of the Ethics Committee on this conundrum?
No. Not an informed one.
Okay. So we've been over this ground before.
Yep.
Let's get on with it.
Okay. So have we gone through all of the ordinance changes, the established building
No, there is the 6 feet.
That's
6 feet
that's one
into
that needs to be discussed.
Into the 25-foot setback.
Right. So
where is
Doug provided an alternative or a secondary recommendation that goes hand in hand with the EBL. If we eliminate the EBL for existing homes and establish 25 feet as the minimum front setback, then the question arises, how far should porches be allowed to encroach into the required front setback? With an EBL, and with houses maybe being 30, 35 feet from the front lot line, it may be more reasonable to say a porch can encroach 9 feet, which is the current rule. But if we're going to establish basically 25 feet as our standard, do we still want to allow porches to encroach 9 feet into the 25? Or is a lesser encroachment advisable? So what, as currently drafted, the 9 feet would go down to 5, based on the hypothetical in Doug's memo. But the council's got to decide what's appropriate. Maybe leaving it at 9 is appropriate. I guess the question
But we would
is,
be sorry. I think 9 feet and a 25-foot setback, it really does come out.
According to this calculation, 40%.
Well, 40% of the 25
of the front
feet.
yard setback.
Can you explain this in layman's terms, please?
Which part?
The encroaching piece and what your recommendation is to solve it?
Well, I don't know how the answer to it. I mean, Ron's idea of 5 feet is fine to me, but I thought maybe, my thinking was that if you're 25 feet, say 20% of it could be the projection for the porch, which would give you a 5-foot. If you're 30 feet back, 20% would give you a 6-foot. So the farther you're back from the street, the more porch you could have, but you're still not 9 feet into a 25-foot right-of-way, which is over a third.
But wait a minute, if you're 30, I'm sorry. If you were 35 feet, then you could have a 10-foot porch without any problem.
but that's if we went with the percentage
With the
option,
percentage.
which is not what's currently
Right. You wrote it to make a specific
right, because
number.
The problem I saw with the percentage approach is people could just stage their construction.
Right. Yeah.
Let me
Make an
phrase it.
absolute-
Let me
having
phrase
a-
it this way.
Yeah.
So the purpose of the front setback generally is to establish a uniformity of setback of houses down the street, so that when you're standing on your front yard or standing on the sidewalk and you're looking down the street, you have a uniform streetscape. Houses are uniformly set back. You've got open space in the front yard. So the question for you is, assuming 25 feet is where you want the front wall of the building, at what point does the porch interfere with the character of the neighborhood? Maybe 9 feet's okay. What's the standard width of a porch that's acceptable to your eye when you're
Right.
standing on the street?
Well, what's a useful porch width?
I was going to say, what's a useful?
5 feet is not a useful porch.
Yeah.
So,
6 feet.
do that.
Yeah.
That's Romeo and Juliet balcony.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Yeah, 9 feet is pretty standard at the county and other towns.
So 9.
And that includes the steps.
No.
No.
No, that doesn't.
No. So that would be 16 feet back from the front. And then if you had steps.
I'm sorry, it does, yes.
Yeah.
The 9 foot does include the step.
Yes.
Oh, it does
But
include
some of
steps.
them only have one step, so
Yeah.
Sometimes they're inset as well.
Yeah.
The majority of them seem to be inset,
Yeah.
not in addition to.
So this still means with 9 feet, you're 16 feet from the front edge of the property, if my arithmetic's right. Yeah.
Well, the only reason I brought it up
Yeah.
was if we eliminate the EBL for existing houses, I wanted to make it clear that might have situations where we have a 25-foot setback on a house, a 9-foot porch, if that's all right with you all. I just wanted to bring it to everybody,
Right,
so we may have
right.
a problem.
I don't
Is that the code currently provides
would allow
up to
that, yeah.
9 feet?
Yeah.
It
If all the
does.
houses are
It
on-
does. If your EBL is 25 feet. But I think it's...
But if an EBL doesn't apply, because you're not a new house, then it allows an encroachment into the
Correct,
front setback
unless
of
that
9 feet.
encroachment provision is adjusted
Right.
with
So
the
in case
adjustment to
of
the
a new
EBL.
house,
I'm really
in
confused.
case of an old house,
It's only
it's
an old
being
house.
renovated,
Yeah.
Yeah,
they can go out the 9 feet, if they put a porch on it,
yeah,
they could go out 9 feet into the 25.
right.
Yes.
Including the steps.
But if the old house is set back 35 feet currently, and we get rid of the EBL, they could have a porch that extends 9 feet past the 25-foot.
Yeah, they
could
got a
have a
big porch.
19-foot porch.
Wow. It's like polo.
But they'll potentially match all the other houses in that.
Correct, from the
If they
a
all had
street
9
view
foot
looking down the street.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean,
Big question.
Holy cow.
What's the difference between EBL and front building line?
Well,
front building line,
can we
front
use that,
building
Fran?
line is the line that is drawn from the portion of the house that is closest to the street. So if you're,
Let's say the building restriction line, the front building restriction
well,
line.
once you add the word restriction, it changes it to something else.
Yeah.
That is the permissible building envelope, where you can build to.
Okay.
That's your restriction line.
And compared to the EBL?
So the EBL is a secondary front setback. So you have a standard default setback right now of 25 feet. But then you have a secondary setback that applies based on where your neighbor's houses are located. If your neighbor's houses are located farther from the setback, then there's a recognition that that's the character for your street. Houses have to be farther than 25 feet. You've got an established setback that's farther than 25, so you've got to comply with that average.
So you're looking for like a pattern in the block or something?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so what's happening with some of the new construction is they're building back further. So when an older house says, I would like to put a front porch on, they say, well, you can't do that anymore because the established building line is back and you would have to apply for an exception on the variant or a variance in order to do that. Now, or we can do what the county has done, and the county has said, where is the county on established building line? They stop, they don't calculate it.
Only for new construction.
And there's, 3 different
New construction,
ways.
but there's also a couple clauses that go with that too. There has to be 2 new houses on the block with more than 25 foot to count, so, but they exempt existing houses.
Right. Good. Okay, so the question really before us now is that I think we like the idea, don't we, of applying the established building line to new houses. The question is whether, which is a separate item in the revision, of whether the encroachment from existing houses into the 25-foot, whether that should be the present 9 feet or a suggested 5 feet limitation.
Or anything in between.
Or anything in between, or more or less. I would suggest that right for the moment, unless we get some egregious cases coming up, that we stay with where we are at the 9 feet and not change that. I haven't seen a compelling argument. I mean, is a porch 14 feet or 16 feet from the front line? Is that a real problem? Is that egregious? I don't know. We have one member of the Run resident.
Speaking about egregious, I'm just speaking about charm and aesthetics.
Yeah.
On Quincy Street, there's examples where like-kind houses were somewhere after the original construction to one of the houses which did not have a front porch, and one has been added. And you look at those 2 houses, you tell me which one you like better. Okay? And I think anything that would take away from the potential of adding patchwork quilt, patina, and not homogeneity, variety, and allowing it, taking away the possibility of someone putting on a porch. And
so are you saying that you like the big porch or you don't like the big porch? You like the big porch, okay.
And I think taking anything away from a future owner who wants to put on a porch would be taken away from adding to the character and charm of addition.
Okay, I would suggest we stick with the 9 feet, but make the other changes as suggested. Anyone else? Doug, you have any opinion on that?
No, I just wanted to bring it to your attention that if we stay with the 25 foot, we might have that issue, but I have no opinion.
Right, okay.
So that doesn't affect how making the changes on the established building.
No, they're separate, they're independent.
That'll just be one amendment that we will remove from this draft.
Okay.
That's on.
What page is that?
That's on page 7. We'll just delete subparagraph by?
6 of ours.
Oh,
Then track changes in
okay, so number 5 is eliminated.
Sorry, did I print up?
No, it's
No,
fine.
here,
It's not-
this one here, for new oh,
No, it's
sorry.
construction
The paragraph that
standards.
begins with projections?
Oh,
Oh, right, got it, okay, right,
Whatever,
yeah.
okay.
They're looking at different versions. It's like-
So is that whole construction standards out, or just the front, the
Just
paragraph 1?
5 little.
paragraph 1 stays in. E1 stays in. We're deleting 5.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
And one other,
And then that took care of air conditioners, may project 5 feet.
That was
into-
already there.
It's already
Right,
there.
that still stays.
Yeah,
That stays.
yeah,
Okay,
right.
got it.
not going to change that. Another issue to discuss is whether gravel should be added to the list of non-vegetative surfaces.
Just one is
Yeah.
the one.
Yeah. Why, yeah, it seems fine with me, but this is added to make it more specific, or what?
Well, it's when we calculate the non-vegetative surface of a project,
Mm-hmm.
only allowed to have 30%. Gravel is not included, which is different engineering-wise than stone. And if you have a gravel driveway, over time, that gravel driveway becomes impervious. So if it's not in the code, somebody who's sharp can say, well, my gravel driveway doesn't count as a 30%.
Oh, because it's a
non-vegetative.
pervious surface.
Yes, and Montgomery County specifically calls gravel driveways the same as concrete. So I wanted
okay.
to add it to make sure there was that,
Okay,
there wasn't a loophole.
If
okay.
you put in a pervious surface driveway.
A what?
You can,
But it's
but
not
it's got to
gravel.
be, you got to meet the 30% non-vegetative.
But Tiffany, what was it, if you put in a what?
A pervious surface
Oh,
driveway.
pervious surface, something that is, the builders say is pervious. Yeah,
Porous pavement,
yeah,
yeah, then that doesn't count.
right, right.
But gravel,
But it's non-vegetative surface.
Well, that's,
I think there's somewhere there, well,
well, yeah, we don't say pervious, we're saying vegetative.
Non-vegetative services.
Yeah, it's a green space regulation
Right.
rather than a water drainage regulation.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, gravel.
Gravel.
Gravel's
Add-
added.
Yo!
Add gravel.
Tiffany, you got to remove that.
Okay.
All right, so next, depending on which version you're looking at, top of page 5, if you're looking at the red line version,
Work hours, what is the,
yes.
Yes.
Okay, so
Oh,
all right, as currently written, the code has several penalty provisions in different places, and the suggestion here is to consolidate the penalty provisions in Chapter 3, where most of them are. And so what we would do is something a little different that's in the draft in front of you. We would amend section,
what are we looking at here?
work hours and definitions?
Thank
Here,
you.
you're right there.
Okay,
all right, so
okay.
currently 3103 is entitled continued violations, and it's one sentence in that provision that says each day a violation of this code continues shall, unless otherwise provided, constitute a separate or repeat offense or infraction. But then,
Is this under enforcement? No.
No, I'm looking.
it's not in there yet.
Oh, we
It's
don't have
not
it.
in what we have.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay,
Quit.
right, okay, go ahead.
Right,
But what was in materials I had it, we emailed.
right.
Okay,
Doug raised it in his list of.
right.
that was wrong.
So section 3103 is just one sentence. Section 6311 is a whole bunch of sentences as seen in front of you. And we would just combine those two, basically, and move section 6311C to section 3103, so we have all the penalty provisions in one place.
Perfect.
Okay.
And so that would be an amendment to the draft that's in front of you.
Okay. So do we need a motion to approve that amendment?
No, we're going to have the whole package.
Right. If you move to introduce the ordinance, you can say as amended.
Okay.
Through our discussions. Now, and then in additionally, section 3201 A and B, which is not in your draft, but it is in the code, has several statements in it regarding what the fine amount is for a civil infraction or a misdemeanor. And the same is true with section 3301 and 3302. So we don't need to say the same thing in different provisions. So we would just remove the duplicative statements and place them in 3301 and 3302. So we just have them in one place.
Okay.
I like getting rid of duplicative statements.
Yes.
As long as we're clarifying the issue at the same time.
Yes, yeah, and then we would also, thank you, Tiffany, we'd also add a sentence. So we say that each day a violation continues, it's a separate infraction, and a good companion sentence to have is, and each infraction is a separate infraction. So if you have two violations of the same provision, they are separate infractions that can be fined separately. An example is we have a provision in the code that says you must construct in accordance with the terms and conditions of your permit, the conditions that are imposed by the code enforcement officer and the village manager from time to time. You could have two separate violations of two different conditions.
Like not removing the trash and relocating the toilet.
Right.
Hypothetically.
And those can be prosecuted as two infractions. So we would just be adding that sentence to confirm.
And so our current fine is $100 a day.
That's right.
So it would be $200 for two pardon?
Yes.
$200 for two infractions and $200 for every day they weren't
abated after the deadline that was given.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
We're good with that.
Good.
Okay.
And then appurtenances, did that?
Yes, so
I have a question though, 'cause I thought here each day a violation of this section continues shall constitute a separate infraction. So does that sort of suggests to me that it would jump up to 250 for subsequent violations.
The 250 applies to a subsequent violation, but not a continuing violation.
Oh, okay.
So in other
If
words,
they did it again.
$100 is your first warning.
Right.
$250 is your second strike.
Okay.
Okay.
So if the infraction is you haven't moved your portable toilet, and every day you don't do that, you are fined $100.
Right. But if you move it and it comes back again, then it's $250.
Okay. Thank you.
For every day, is that clear? Every day it's $250 after that point?
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
And again, it's per item on that. So if it's trash, a toilet,
right,
and a boat,
it's $250.
Right.
Each one.
All right, yes, and then there's also an edit to clarify the definition of building. So right now, as written, the code provides that a building is something above grade, and it's including the above grade projections, like a stoop, stairway, steps, or what have you.
Do we have that?
I'm sorry?
Do we have
Yes, yeah.
Give him the number of years. What's the number of years? What page? What page?
Page 5 in the clean version. And it is...
Oh, definition.
It is
Definition. Got it.
7-101.
Got it. At the bottom of page 5. 7-1 that we have. Okay. Building means porches.
It's not on this page. Well, yeah. All right, so we'd add a sentence to clarify what above grade means in the negative. We'll say building excludes projections and appurtenances that are constructed at or below grade, such as a stairwell or a patio. Those are two specific examples that have come up in the village that have confused people. Because a stairwell leading to a garage or a basement below is below grade, we don't regulate it in terms of setbacks. Same with a at grade or below grade patio.
Okay, so if you walk out of your back door straight on grade to a patio, the patio is not part of the
Correct, but if it's terraced or decked, then it does become subject to setbacks.
Right. Okay.
It's still part of your non-vegetated surface, correct?
Was backyard.
Well, yeah, if it was in the front yard.
Yeah.
But it doesn't apply to the setbacks.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, it's a non-vegetated surface, but not a building in the front yard. All right, and that's it.
Okay. That's what I thought. Okay.
A motion to approve.
As amended.
As amended.
I will move to approve as amended.
And it's a motion to introduce.
Motion to introduce.
Ordinances.
416-1.
As amended.
As amended. There's a motion. Is there a second?
I will. Who moved? Did I move?
You
I
moved.
moved.
So I'll second.
Okay.
Or you can move again.
Any more discussion?
But there's a...
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Okay.
Just for the
Motion
record,
carried.
the timeline is what, Ron, so that everybody understands what happens next.
So,
This has been introduced.
right, and we'll lay it over for 30 days, have a public hearing. When is our...
But the next meeting is less than
May
30
12th.
days.
It's less than
So it'll
30
be,
days.
the public hearing will be in June. June 16th, yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, everybody.
Where are we?
We're down to action on the council minutes of March 17th. It seems to me that they've approved them and they're on, but we just need a motion to approve as was sent out.
Yes.
May I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Susan, motion.
And second?
I will second.
All in favor?
You.
Ron was going to talk to us about the Comcast and Verizon memorandums of understanding.
So you've already approved the Comcast cable franchise extension by ordinance. Now before you is an agreement to allow Montgomery County to enforce the cable franchise in the village. This memorandum of understanding sets forth the terms upon which the county will do so and includes a description of how the PEG grants will be allocated among the participating municipalities. You have one for Verizon as well because, as you'll recall, with the new allocation of the PEG grant funds and the county providing the match obligation so that the Comcast PEG grant can be used for operating expenses, the county gets a larger share of the Comcast PEG grant and the Verizon PEG grant, so both MOUs need to be executed.
And are you recommending we do that?
Yes.
And do we need a motion to do that?
Yes, we do.
And is there a motion to approve the Comcast Verizon MOUs?
I move to approve.
Susan moves.
Comcast Verizon.
Second.
MOU.
Okay.
Arthur seconds.
Aye.
Question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Done.
If you'll sign those.
I'll sign those before we leave.
Okay.
And we're down to the treasurer's report.
Which I prepared this
In
week
absence of
our treasurer.
Right.
We're doing very well in terms of income. We will probably end the year with about $150,000 more from our state income tax revenues than we had expected at the beginning of the year. a good chunk of that is because the state did not recognize many Martin's Addition addresses as being in Martin's Addition. And so for several years, we never got the state income tax that was owed to us. That has now been corrected. We got a windfall from past misallocations. In the future, we ought to be getting a little bit more from the state because now they apparently have squared away their addresses and what address belongs to which municipality. On the negative side, the Supreme Court Wynn case says that as of February, Martin's Addition owes about $70,000 to the state because we improperly did not allow residents to claim out-of-state tax deductions. The Supreme Court says you have to do it at the state, the local, and the county level. Maryland did not do it. The Supreme Court said you have to. So as of February, the end of February, we owed about $68,000, which will be paid back to the state over the next 2 years. Next February, they will do a further accounting of all the people in Martin's Addition who send in amended tax returns asking for their money back. The comptroller thinks that most of it has already occurred, especially if people knew they were getting money. They have sent in their amended returns or requests. They think that in the future, I think there's still a year or two more that people can apply. Is that right? I think another 2 years, and then it starts.
17, I think. 2017.
17. Okay. So and then the statute of limitations or other restrictions apply. And so we think the comptroller thinks that we took our biggest hit already, but next February we'll have another accounting to see if we owe any more. So anyway, over the next 2 years, 9 quarters, we'll be paying back the $70,000. And the way we pay it back is that instead of getting the full amount of our regular income tax revenues, they will deduct it from what we get. So we don't actually have to send them a check.
But isn't it the next 9 quarters beginning
November
2017?
November, no, they're beginning November. I think this November, it's 2016.
I thought Governor Hogan gave everybody a waiver for like a year.
Another year?
There was a bill.
Okay, because I have the one from the comptroller that said
Yeah.
November 2016.
Yeah, has the governor
Okay.
signed the bill yet?
I don't know.
But yeah, it was
okay.
Madaleno's bill. It would allow.
Okay, so
payment to be deferred.
we'll either be starting this coming November or a year from November.
It's to help jurisdictions who have a much bigger amount to pay back
right.
than we do.
Yeah.
That maybe need some time to budget for that.
Anyway, we're in the hole for $68,000.
Okay. In general?
In general, we got money in the bank, and our expenses have been running below budget, and our revenues have been running above budget.
Who could ask for anything more?
Yeah.
Motion to approve the financial report as presented.
I move to approve Arthur's report.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so we're down to the manager's report. I bet you thought we'd never get there.
More time to prepare myself, I guess. The couple administrative matters, it's already been talked about, but the centennial celebration, I just want to echo what we've already heard. Thanks to everyone who helped out, especially the Centennial Committee. Naomi Nairman was the chair, Michelle Malloy, Richard, Susan, and also Beth, our assistant village manager. Everyone put in a lot of hours to make it a really good success. So thanks to everyone who could make it. I hope everyone enjoyed themselves. The next big shindig we have is the celebration on the sidewalk that's happening May 12th. So we're busy planning for that, which we've also heard a little bit about tonight. In terms of the website, we had about 1,800 page views for the last month, which is about in line with what it was for the month before.
What does that mean? 1,800 people went to our website?
That counts people that looked at it twice.
So hits.
Hits,
Not unique hits.
Right.
So that I don't. What do you mean that looked at it twice?
So
that includes.
Tiffany might have looked at it 1,000 times.
Right. Right.
Okay.
It's not like it's not doing it by IP address. It's just every time anybody loads that page.
Right. It's
It
not
gets
unique.
counted.
Right.
Okay.
And
Ron needs to add something.
No, I can wait. I'm sorry. Yeah, didn't want
no, it's fine. I did notice next month we might have the number might jump up because for some reason it spiked around like the 12th and 13th. I don't know what that was about, but kind of interesting.
Getting ready for the centennial.
I guess so. Yeah.
everyone was
People
checking.
making sure that they got the timing right.
Yeah, the timing, yeah.
So the next big one is the FEMA reimbursement for the snow plowing for the big snowstorm. So Beth and I attended a meeting with representatives from FEMA, and basically what they do is they say from the state of emergency, they allow you a 48-hour window where you claim funds, and FEMA reimburses 75% of the funds. So we figured out that 48-hour window where we spent the most money, and should get a check back from FEMA for about a little over $17,000. I'm still waiting to hear back from them, so it's good.
Good job.
Staffing. I began as village manager on March 28th. I thought that was worth noting, I guess. So I will say thank you to...
This is your 3-week anniversary.
Yes. I do want to say thank you to everyone that introduced themselves to me, whether it was stopping in here or at the Centennial. I already feel very welcomed in the community, so I do appreciate that. And thank you to the council, and most importantly, thank you to Beth, who's really helped my transition into the new job and has been just a pleasure to work with. Contracts. So I also have some attachments related to these contracts. In terms of municipal code enforcement, I don't actually have an attachment for that. I just wanted to update and say that right now we have a sort of informal arrangement with our code enforcement person. So we sat down the other day and we're going to hash out a more formal contract, and he actually works with some of the other villages, so it should be something. And we also have sort of a description of his job title sort of thing, so we have some things to work off of when we formalize this contract. Next is arborist. So Tori, the previous village manager, one of the last things she did was sign a contract with our current arborist who's been with the village for a while, Paul Wolf, and he. Part of our one of our charter amendments just stipulates that we go out to bid for anything over $10,000, and that wasn't done. So I've been working to kind of put together and see what the other villages do in terms of how they arrange. Right now we have Paul as our sort of tree expert. Consultant, so to speak, and he's also our maintenance person. So I sort of asked around the other villages and saw if they had a similar arrangement, and it's sort of split. A lot of towns are using a gentleman named Dr. Tolbert Feather, which, if we're just going off of names, that guy has one of the greatest names I've ever heard of. And his rate is about the same as what we pay Paul Wolf. I think he's charging $85 an hour or so, and I think Paul is about $80 an hour with us. With Dr. Feather, it looks like the towns that do use him typically have a separate maintenance contractor that they use. some towns are just having their arborists do most work, but then maybe bidding out individual jobs. So there's a lot of flexibility there, and it just sort of depends on what the council, how they want to delineate those two jobs and how they want to move forward with that. I also attached I don't know how useful this is, but from our FY 2016 budget, we didn't really break down a difference between the arborist work and tree maintenance work, other than the closest thing was tree maintenance versus tree replacement. Tree replacement, actually, that sort of reminds me, is one option we do have there is because all tree replacement has to go through the state. Chevy Chase View actually uses one of the state foresters. His name is Sabu Hakim, and so when they're wondering about removing a tree, they just bring him in, and I believe that he's just free because he works for the state.
But we use him also because we can't remove any trees without his approval.
Right.
So,
right.
The arborist does other things, like should this limb come down?
Right. And he does some of those things for them as well, but is not always available because he is has a large jurisdiction. So
the question for us basically is, are we comfortable with the same person making the maintenance decisions, which could include removing trees that are approved by the state, and doing the actual work? Do we feel like there's a conflict of interest, or that there's enough protections because of the state being involved? That we want two people, an arborist and a tree maintenance company.
And I will say that Chevy Chase Village split those. They used to have a similar arrangement to what we have, and split the two jobs about 7 years ago, because they kind of had those same concerns. Not that they felt like anything nefarious was going on, but just that it sort of protected them. And
I think there was another thing they did. They have a tree ordinance that requires permitting and licensing to take down private trees.
Yeah, they have a very
and the
very
arborist
strong
is
ordinance.
the arbiter of all that.
Yeah.
So that he has a more expansive job.
Yeah. Right. And one thing, and they use Dr. Tolbert Feather actually for that. One thing that they did say is that if you do go down the route of splitting up the jobs, there is likely to be some growing pains in the first half year, 6 months, year or so, as the arborist might feel like one course of action is the best, and the maintenance people might say this isn't what we would have done. And so there's that. Also, a lot of the contractors have an arborist that they like to work with, but they can also put out proposals just on their own. So some things to think about there.
Well, for us to put out a contract, we have to decide whether we are going to use the present system, which is hire somebody to do the maintenance and determine what that's going to be and do it, or whether we're going to hire yet a separate person to make those decisions and then hire someone who does those recommendations.
Right, and then the other option is to just go out to bid on individual jobs if you feel like you're not getting a good deal, or if you're wondering if you need a second opinion, which our contract actually does allow us to go out for second opinions as
and we've done that from time to time, of where Paul himself has said, it's up for grabs. So we have somebody we've brought in.
So I just did a quick, analysis of the information that Matt provided us. Thank you. 9 total different municipalities, 4 of which split, and 1 we don't know what they do. the ones that split are Somerset, Garrick Park, Chevy Chase View, and Chevy Chase Village.
Which are the larger. So do you have any feeling, having done that?
Done what?
I've looked at all of those and come up
math.
with 50-50.
I know that this has been a resident concern that was raised in the past, and we're spending approximately $35,000 on tree maintenance and tree replacement work last year.
I kind of like the idea of the combination, the joint, the one organization doing it, because they work together. They know what they're doing. They have a familiarity. And I think your observation, that's the bigger ones who split, because there's probably more work in each category in a larger jurisdiction.
Or they just perceive it as being, the arborist has no vested interest in what actually happens.
Celeste, did you want?
Okay, I would say if there's any perception that there could be a potential conflict of interest, that we should split it.
Yeah, I think there is kind of a potential for at least the appearance. Not to say that there has been an actual conflict.
And I think that we should put that on the record, at least I want to say that this is coming up now because as we've gone through all of the contract reviews, what's been in place and what's not, there was not a competed contract for our arborists in place, and given the charter, we have to compete the contract.
Steve, you had...
I just wanted to ask, since you have data on different jurisdictions, the ones that seem most comparable to us are Section 3 and Section 5, and I'm curious where they...
So 3, it appears that they use the same arborist and maintenance, and 5, I'm going to assume that they use different because they use Dr. Tolbert Feather as an arborist.
Yeah.
He doesn't do maintenance.
Yeah.
And Davey. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
So 1 and 1 on the Section 3 and 5 comparison.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't get a name on maintenance.
That's okay.
So, yeah.
But
I think it's Lee.
this is great.
Oh, yes. You know what? Yeah. Thank you.
What was that? I didn't hear.
They use Lee Tree Service in Section 5.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Thank you, Doug.
Okay, so we need a motion if we're going to split off.
Are we?
You don't need a motion.
No.
This is just a contract decision.
A contract
This is an administrative decision, correct, Council?
Okay.
Are we ready to
Well-
do that now? I thought we were just going
Well,
through manager's report at the moment.
Do you want to take action on the existing contract?
No, I don't. I don't think.
I need to see council.
Okay, we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we're ready for that now.
Okay.
So moving on, the next potential contract that I was looking at is our leaf collection options for the fall. Basically, our two options are to do what we do now is bagging and providing bags for residents, or to do leaf vacuuming. So I have another sort of list here. Pretty much most of the villages here around here, they all provide vacuuming, except for Section 3, because Section 3, they don't, because they said their streets are too narrow for vacuuming, which would then seem to be a concern for us, but we did get a bid from Rolling Acres that they would do vacuuming for us. They said that they would do 4 trips over the course of the fall. Each trip takes about 16 hours, and they have a 4-man team, and they charge $220 an hour. So on the low end, it would cost us a little over $14,000, and if it took on the high end 20 hours, it would take us $17,600. This is in comparison to right now. We spent $13,700 on bags last year. So Not nothing, but not a huge significant increase necessarily. In terms of whether or not people want that, I went through our leaf bag delivery list last year, and about 280 residents took the bags, and 47 did not. Now that doesn't necessarily mean anything, because the leaf bags might be used for something else as well.
Or you might have leaf bags from 18 years ago. They're collectibles right now.
Yeah. Right,
I'm at the
right.
bottom of the
Right.
pile.
Right.
Everyone, and actually I do. Probably they're 25 years old. I haven't taken bags for a couple of years.
You can probably mulch those.
And just because you take bags also doesn't necessarily mean that you wouldn't prefer to have vacuuming either. So,
and there's another thing is that the bags cost a lot more than we thought they were going to cost, because we didn't get them till the last minute and couldn't get the deals that we thought we were going to get.
Okay.
So that
If we ordered much earlier.
If we had ordered earlier, we could have gotten about half the cost.
Right.
So, another thing with regards to vacuuming is that the proposal, and granted we haven't done an RFP or anything, so this was just sort of one proposal from Rolling Acres, but it was different than any of the arrangements the other towns and villages had, where they pretty much to a T did it weekly, as opposed to just 4 times a year, which might lead to accumulation of leaves and junk, and it might get kind of messy if you leave it to at best twice a month and hope that it snows in December. So that's another, it may end up costing us more. Chevy Chase View's a lot bigger than us, but they spent about twice as much as the Rolling Acres proposal doing it weekly. So, but then again, Section 5 vacuums every Monday, and they spent less than this proposal. So it could be worth pursuing, and it could end up being neutral in terms of expenses compared to bags. It's a matter of whether or not we want to go down that route.
I have another suggestion. Encourage people to mow their leaves. Mulch. Yeah. Instead of blowing, raking, just go over with a lawnmower. It's good for the lawn. And it saves money for the village, and I'll tell you, I haven't raked in several years now, and I'm very pleased. So, and
you don't get the bags either then.
And I don't get the bags. So I think it's something to encourage, and I'd like to get some official gardeners' views on this, to perhaps encourage residents. People like to have that perfectly green-looking lawn, but it's kind of wasteful. It's non-environmental. It's non-green, and it costs money.
I don't know if you can legislate personal property.
No, we can't. We can't legislate it, but we can encourage it.
That.
It's like locking your car
I think
doors.
you would get quite a bit of resistance. Because that is a
education.
personal preference.
Right,
No,
education.
we're suggesting.
We're suggesting.
It's a suggestion, right.
Educate our residents and gardeners.
So I don't think we can make a decision on this leaf bags because Katya, who feels strongest about vacuuming, isn't here. On the other hand, it would serve her right if we made the decision and stuck with leaf bags. I mean,
there's another issue here, is that, as has been suggested, people use those bags for garden waste all through the year.
In addition to.
In addition to.
Her thought was, it's either going to be in addition to, or we're going to get rid of the leaf bags in their entirety and just go to vacuuming, and then people buy their own leaf bags. Defending Katya's honor, I don't know if this came up already, the idea of vacuuming leaves was very popular on the survey that we conducted last fall. However, it was not posed as an either or with the leaf bags at the time, so I don't know what residents would say if we said we're going to stop giving leaf bags and just do vacuuming.
Question.
Put my contract
on the leaf bag expense. does that include the picking up of the leaf bags?
No, that's just the bags and their delivery to the home.
Okay, so then as far as leaf bag expense, it includes the expense of actually having the truck come by.
Yeah, that's right, we have not included that. The yard collection.
Right, but we have, it isn't limited to, just the autumn months. Every week that come by and take yard waste, and so it'd be sort of hard to separate out the leaf costs of that, because it's a service we get all year.
Right, well, for me it'd be horrible because the squirrels have been going crazy in my magnolia tree, and there's a bag or two a week that I have filling because they don't know how to make a nest. They cut and they drop to the ground, and I fill the bag.
Right.
And if you started to go do the vacuum, I don't know what I'd do.
You have to train your squirrels better.
Right.
I'm conducting classes. They run off.
So regulating behavior, as Celeste says.
I think ask the guy who lived in Rome and who could help you.
Okay, where are we?
Great. So
we had a total breakdown of
also another thing is our lease is up in June, so Beth and I have been collecting some data to help in negotiations for the lease. I haven't attached anything related to that here. The next item is related to safety. We got an email today, actually, from the State Highway Administration, which has jurisdiction over Brookville Road, to make the corner of Taylor and Brookville safer. So they proposed two different concepts for us, which I've attached. The first makes the crosswalks rectangular and requires a little bit more work. So it relocates two storm drains. They're kind of a mess because they're drawn all over each other. But it relocates two storm drains to relocate the crossing closer to the intersection. One of my concerns with this one is that it would require taking out one of the trees on the right-of-way there. Option 2 has sort of a diagonal crosswalk, so it's kind of funky in that way. I talked to Andy Harney, who's the village manager in Section 5, Section 3, to sort of go over the two options. We both felt like option 1 made more sense, and especially when approaching it from a public safety perspective. A diagonal crosswalk just seems strange to me.
The diagonal, where's the diagonal?
So you're looking at concept 1.
Oh, I think you said they're on top of each other.
So there's the...
Matt, I don't know if either one of these address the issue of if you have a small child or even an adult who, if there's an SUV parked here, you can't see that person until they're in the crosswalk. And I couldn't tell if either one of these addresses that.
So yeah, both of the options do eliminate the parking space there.
But I mean,
that handicap spot that's right by the stop sign.
Yes.
But someone still has to come all the way up to the crosswalk to stop. So, I mean, you may be getting a car's length to see them, but it's not. It doesn't solve the issue.
Truly the safest crosswalk is the one that's by La Ferme. And because of that, the visibility issue, between the parked cars, this one that's right across from the market is a difficult crosswalk. The one that's by La Ferme, you have more distance in order to see people and would be the safest. But I don't know how you would ever stop a crosswalk, coming across Brookville to the market. I mean, that's...
They take out the stripes.
The flashing
Well-
lights and that it's in between cars. And
Well, the thing is, they've moved it up to the narrowest part
Well, and taking out a parking place.
and taking out a parking place. So
So they're
that gives
hoping
better
It
visibility.
should give some, yeah.
And the crosswalk is actually shorter to cross the street because you're coming out from like that
Yeah,
bump.
they've moved out the ramp and the brick sidewalk there.
So what are the next steps on this? They're asking us to pick one?
So they have suggested that we have a meeting in May.
Get with them, get together with them. Right, good.
To go over any questions we might have. They've also, granted, we just got these proposals today, but have been responsive and answered a couple emails today. So we can email with them, or I can bring concerns to this meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to sit down with them in person and
And I think
go
police
over it.
officers to look at that as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Say that again, what'd you say?
Police
Police officers to look at that.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
And these, I think these should be attached then to the minutes also, so that the residents, all the residents have a copy of what these proposals are.
Okay.
In fact, I think we have to go outside, stand there.
Right, I agree.
Do the sites and everything, see what it looks like.
But I think, we need to make that information
Yeah.
available.
I suggest that you have Joe Kuchar look at them also.
Yeah, oh, yes,
Oh,
yes,
good
yes,
idea.
yes, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Great. So, the next thing on my report was updating on WSSC, which Doug already pretty much updated us on. Beth and I met with Dwayne, who's the construction inspector at WSSC, and Greg Staley, who is the project manager for Rustler, who's the contractor who's doing the work. And we went over some of our expectations moving forward, mainly with communication. So we tried to get them to email us or call in the houses that they'll be tying to the line and be able to send out the emails every day, so that people are not only getting the paper warning that your work should be getting done tomorrow, but getting 24 hours notice also by email. So hopefully that's been a little bit better in the past 2 or 3 weeks. Bradley Street is almost completely done, except for a tie-in at the dead end. They need to remove the tree, because I think the line is right under the tree.
We should make sure, I took a picture of it, but since we just put up those new parking signs and the barrier there is intact, whatever happens is on them.
Yeah, okay. And we did sort of touch on that as well, because that's also right there. Melville is done, and Tuesday or Wednesday Raymond should be finished, and so once all that's done, we'll be doing a walkthrough with Dwayne to go over what they need to replace, what needs to go back to the way it was, etc. And beginning next week, work's going to start on Quincy. I know it's been slow going. They were saying that it was going to happen this week, and then I think I guess that they just didn't want to start on a Friday or a Thursday and then have to leave, so they should be starting on Monday.
Are they going to put in an above-ground line on Quincy?
It's there.
It's already there.
It's already there.
It's been there a while.
Yep.
Did they
Okay.
provide an explanation as to why they put the above ground line in so much in advance of the work actually being done?
No.
Okay, so let's just, I know you already know this because you've talked to residents on Quincy Street about it, but let's stay on them to make sure that work progresses there, because they've been dealing with that for weeks.
Right, yes. And so we also had actually a separate meeting with the subcontractor who's doing, and that could have been what the delay was, is that they decided to go to a subcontractor for just Quincy Street, and that was related to some
So Rustler's not doing Quincy?
that's right, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, that I think is also why they're not starting until next week, is that this subcontractor is finishing up some other job
And
this
why,
week.
did they give some explanation of why they were using a different contractor?
Required to,
Yeah.
for a minority.
Because they're required to give a certain percentage of business to minority-owned small businesses, so it was related to that.
Thank you. Did you have a question,
Yeah.
Doug?
Yeah, first of all, I'm Doug Snyder. I live at 153 Quincy Street, and I just want to thank all of you for all the hard work you're doing. It's remarkable. Besides that, I had a concern about the work that was done when they did the work on Oxford Street, because I got water in a finished basement, and this may not be the forum to bring it up, but I just want to mention it to you guys, that I called and talked to the people at WSSC a long time ago, and they didn't really have any preventive answers, except that if water runs constantly on the street, that's inappropriate. The fellow told me that the connections should all be tight. And I have this theory, could be wrong, that with all the water running constantly in the street, that I wasn't observing, but I'd see when I come home from work, and that it affected maybe the water table with the underground springs that we have and whatnot. And the water looked like it came from underneath the basement, because it was limited to a central portion of that area. The point I'm making is that they, other than that, they had no adaptive maneuvers. I'm living in fear of the work that's going to be going on our street now, and anticipating this for years. So I called because I did notice that there was water dripping, not a huge amount, but constantly dripping from the hydrant on the north side of the hydrant on Oxford. And I called 2 days ago because they said no water should be dripping. So I want to just keep them accountable, and I have not gotten a call back.
Okay.
So I just want to tell you, so we're in a never land here with this process, and it's concerning.
We should also get Doug Dwayne's contact information, because he's the WSCC project manager.
Yeah, I met him. The same fella, was he there during the Oxford experience? The same person? I think I remember named Dwayne. I'm not positive, but I think so.
There was a Dwayne, but it was a contractor guy a couple years ago we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
He was a contractor who was doing the work then, and they were great guys.
As opposed to WSSC, Dwayne we're talking about is the WSSC supervisor.
Oh, that's who you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, but at the time Oxford Street was done, there was a contractor guy who was Dwayne.
Okay.
And they were very communicative, very helpful, great.
Well, he was I just lived through it on Bradley, and Dwayne handed out his card like hotcakes, and the 2 or 3 times I know other residents called, they got responses pretty quick.
He was really good.
He almost always has his cell phone on him, so he's very communicative.
So
I don't know if that's going to solve any problems, but I think
But we'll send you his phone number
that'd be
and
great.
contact information.
There's
Email
no
you.
real anticipatory thinking on their parts from the from the Oxford experience, which was a little disappointing. In fact, I invited them over to the house to show them where they didn't even want to come into the house. And I said, no, I'm inviting you into the house. I want you to see, no, we're not. They said, okay, we'll come in. It was like there's a separation there between what they're doing and what's going on in their own.
Yeah, I know. I think for them, they are sometimes worried about. They feel like they're in charge of the water until it gets to your house. So once it gets into your house, I don't want to touch it, because then I'm liable for we're on the same page.
Okay.
The hydrant that Doug referred to is actually sort of on the east side of Oxford Street, in the vicinity of the Keller residence, the Kelly residence.
Okay.
And there is a little bit of water dripping out of it. There's like a standpipe or something that comes up, and there's a little bit of water dripping out of there. And after your meeting on Monday, that whole crew was down there. They looked at it, and it apparently didn't bother them enough to try to get it to stop running.
Okay.
So if that could be stopped, that'd be nice.
Okay. Great. Yeah. I'll let them know about that. All right. One last note about WSSC is that they should be done, weather permitting, end of May, early June. So hopefully we only have about one more month of it.
They give a projection for the completion of Quincy Street.
But the entire project should be done by the end of May, early June. So
Including
Quincy Street. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
What's the latest on the negotiations about money from WSSC and Washington Gas?
Sure. So Washington Gas. So we probably want to have Joe Cutro look at curbs and gutters first. Make sure that doesn't need to be replaced, or that it does get replaced before we do all that. We basically have two options. The first is that they can each give us a lump sum of money, then we can hire somebody to do it, or we can hire them to use their contractor and do it all.
Poorly.
Yeah.
Poorly, is that what you said?
Well, or just get a lump sum from Washington Gas and have WSSC do it through their contractor. So I have had a talk with Washington Gas. They're going to send me an estimate. They said either late this week or early next week.
An estimate of what they owe us for what they've done in the entire village.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. Part of the problem is I don't know what needs to be done for everything, because there are so many things involved in paving a street. So they could come at me and say, here's this much money, and we don't necessarily know what the final price is going to be.
Right, that's why we use Joe Cutro to
Or the guy I said you.
Right. So then
Fox.
the next step that we were also looking at is Arthur had a contract of a Rhodes Scholar. ROADS.
I have a certificate.
Pun very much intended, I guess. That he had offered previously to come look at the roads in the village and go over exactly what
he works for the state at the University of Maryland.
So hopefully we can get in touch. We can get in touch with him and.
Yeah, he has offered in the past to do it.
So we'll try to coordinate with him and get then an estimate, and then it depends on if how we want to use their money or their resources.
Right.
Question?
Yeah.
In the redoing of this existing surfaces, how much existing is going to be removed?
Well,
that's one of the
part of the questions. I mean, we hope that they go curb to curb.
No, and the question is how deep
you go.
won't be known until they do.
Yeah.
They have to do core.
Some streets are different.
Yeah. Right. So it'll be a while.
Yeah.
What they're going to do is they're going to mill the pavement and take off about that much of the existing asphalt and cut grooves in it. So when they lay on the new top asphalt of a couple inches, it'll be level with the curb, so it won't be higher, and the new asphalt will adhere to the existing asphalt. But they'll go back and repair all the potholes and do all of the maintenance before they do that.
Yeah, but there's a lot of places where they will have dug through entirely the complete depth of the blacktop, and the differentiation between milling off a few inches with the base of the old stuff versus where it went down through everything, and now you've got a packed ground. That's going to show up very soon.
So there's crushed rock.
The spider webs or there's cracks already will have to be taken out, and a sub base will be placed before they put the top on. That's normal.
When DC did Western Avenue a few years ago, I couldn't believe they went down, they took everything out, and they were down like 2 and 3 feet in some places. I said, how in the world is this ever going to get built? And they did it, and of course it's wonderful, and they did a nice job. And I said, well, that's really a complete, thorough way to get it done. And terrific, but if this is just going to be a top coat on top of existing tar,
Talking
and
roads.
then where it's been completely dug out in holes and channels on a long-term basis, I don't think that's going to be very serviceable.
I think, right, I don't want to cut this off, but it's 10:15,
Yes.
and I'm about ready to go home. And so we need to get through the rest of his report. No more questions. Moving on.
Okay, so Pepco, I don't know if you've gotten the emails, but so Pepco gave residents a $50 bill credit, and the first of two, so you'll get another one next year. This is related to their merger with Exelon. And then also on Tuesday, supposedly unrelated to the merger with Exelon, they are asking for a 10% rate increase. So I sat in on a call on that and sort of asked them to go over the numbers. I'll spare you, but hopefully the county is also there's talk that the county might not approve this request, so it may be a moot point. Street lighting, we finally got some information to do an RFP. So Scott Watson finally sent us he sent us specifications and a drawing of the fixtures, and then later today sent even more detailed stuff. So we have enough stuff to now go out to RFP, to do an RFP. So Tiffany and Richard and I are hopefully going to meet next week and draw up stuff to do an RFP to get these to get things that will work.
Can I ask?
No, we're moving on.
I think I owe.
Okay,
What light was finally settled on?
Induction.
Okay. So we're back to induction, which was what the council had favored.
Right.
Okay.
Some members of the council had favored.
There was a vote.
I remember that.
Thank you. So streets and sidewalks, kind of already touched on that. So sanitation, bulk pickups on May 14th, and we're going to coordinate again with a wider circle for any donations. And building administration, we already had Doug present that. So thank you, Doug.
So we're down to resident comments again.
Real quick, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I misspoke. Madalena's bill was amended, and pursuant to the Third Amendment, the repayment schedule is 20 installments beginning February 2019. And the governor...
20 installments, quarterly installments.
20 quarterly installments.
Beginning when?
After February 2019. And the governor has not vetoed the bill. So it will.
But he hasn't signed it?
He has apparently said he's not going to sign it, but he's not going to veto it either, so it will become effective by lack of veto.
Okay.
Can we just pay it and be done with it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's funny because that's what the law actually says. If the municipalities fail to timely pay, then the deductions will start in February.
Okay.
So I would encourage
But you have the
us to
option
just
of paying
pay
it
and be done
immediately.
with it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so whatever.
How much do we owe them? 78?
Well, right now, 68,000 as of the
Whatever
last
we need to do to
accounting.
figure out what we need to pay the comptroller now and make sure that we have a record of paying that. Let's do that so that we're not.
Some towns are maybe going to hold on to it and earn interest.
Yeah.
Ask Arthur about how much interest.
1/10%.
Right.
That's going to be that $5 stamp that you used.
So have we figured we've had enough opportunity for comments, or do you guys still want to talk away?
Well, I wanted to say just one thing.
Okay.
With the sincerity and the passion that we sometimes express to our war veterans and thanking them for their service, I want to thank all of you.
Yo.
Thank you. And this meeting's adjourned.
Good.
Turn off the machine.
In order to receive counsel and resolve the tree issue,
We have to go into closed session?
And it wasn't anticipated before this meeting, but given the discussion tonight, I do have some legal advice that I'd like to give you in closed session.
Okay, so we need a motion to go into closed session.
Yes.
In order to receive legal counsel with regarding the tree.
The arborist contract and village policies and procedures. And the authority would be General Provisions Article Section 3305B7 to consult with legal counsel to obtain legal advice.
So we need a motion to go into closed session.
Yeah, pursuant to General Provisions Article Section 305B7 to consult with counsel to obtain legal advice on a legal matter, namely the arborist contract and village contracting policies and procedures.
No, I don't think so. Do we want Doug to stay? No.
Okay.
Thank you, Doug.
See y'all.
Good night.
Someone say so moved.
So moved.
And I'm going to have you sign this right now.
All in favor?
Aye.